Hey, friends, brothers, and sisters. I have a very special guest with you today here on the channel Get Closer. It's all about getting closer to God. We're going to go hard after God and listen to a very amazing person, Jerry Marzinsky. Um, he has a wealth of knowledge and experience in dealing with some realms in professional places, straight from experience. So I can't wait to hear what he has to say and teach us all about the topic. But let me just tell you a little bit about this awesome man. I'm so honored to interview him and bring him on our channel. Jerry Marzinski's a bachelor's degree and master's education. Jerry's a retired licensed psychologist or psychotherapist with over 40 years of experience working with and studying the thought process of the psychotic and criminally insane patients in some of the most volatile psychiatric institutions in the nations. Uh, Jerry is a commercial pilot, a certified scuba diver, a long distance motorcyclist. He has held the position of second lieutenant in the Arizona Civil Air Patrol and assistant scoutmaster. He was awarded the state of Arizona's Meritorious Service Award and Pima College Apple Award of Teaching Abnormal Psychology. His former academic training comprises of a BA in psychology from Temple University, a master's degree in counseling from the University of Georgia, and 2 years of study in a PhD psychology program. He is the co-author of An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind, Breaking the Spells of the Ivory Tower, and currently has a private practice in Arizona. Welcome, Jerry Marzinsky.
Thank you. Good to be here. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't remember half that stuff if it weren't written down.
Yeah, as you can tell, I kind of had some trouble with the words there. I always, when I'm reading text or something, especially King James or something, I put it in Isaac speak.
If you asked me to repeat it now, I'd probably have forgotten half of it.
Yeah, so check out the descriptions. We'll have a link to his book there, Jerry and Sherry's book, Amazing Journey into a Psychotic Mind.
Yeah,
And
this is what it looks like. So you want to find out how we came to the conclusion that the voices that schizophrenics hear are demons or evil spirits. It's all in here. Okay, you can get this on Amazon. You can get it through Lulu Press.
yeah, I encourage people to get it. I have yet to read it. I bought it on Lulu, and I have so many books to read right now. It's like it's in the stack. But I am so honored to have you on and get your perspective on and take on things and just pointing out the reality, the spiritual reality that is out there that they are dumbing down. And so this man has been shining the truth on it for years with over 40 years of experience in it, in experiential realms, and experiencing it for himself, trying to help these people. So why don't you just give us some background and history on how you started finding out these things are actual evil entities, they're not hallucinations, and yeah, give us a little background and context of that.
Well, I guess it started out with, the way I was raised. I never trusted authority. I mean, it was even from a young age, I didn't trust authority. And while I did my undergraduate degree at Temple University. And what I hated most about undergraduate psychology is there was no way to check out what they were saying. There was no way to check out what they were teaching us. You couldn't go into a mental hospital. You couldn't go into a psych ward. There's no way you could check out anything of what they were saying except for maybe abnormal psychology, where you could go into a rat lab and actually watch this stuff happen.
Right.
But the rest of it, and that was always uncomfortable for me. You memorize what's in the textbook, spit it back out, and you get a grade based on, so it's kind of a form of brainwashing. And there wasn't any spiritual anything to it. Nothing.
Wow.
Spirit was never mentioned in the 2 years or 4 years of undergraduate school and the master's degree. There was no mention of spirit. PhD was even more spiritually devoid than any of the others. I mean, it was there. We're spiritual beings. I mean, if your spirit leaves your body just drops and rots. I mean, and they have no insight into the spirit whatsoever, and they have no insight into the mind either. What
Wow. So
psychology is study of behavior. So they watch behavioral patterns based, they don't have any insight into the computer up there. You know
yeah,
what's so and we're taught from the time we're youngsters that every thought that comes into your head belongs to you.
yeah.
That is far from the truth. That is far from the truth. I don't know if you ever heard of Emanuel Swedenborg, Christian mystic, lived some 300 years ago.
No.
Yeah, he was given complete access to heaven and hell. He was like one of the top scientists of his day. He was
Wow.
the chief mining engineer for the Queen of Sweden, and he was like the Newton of his day. I mean, he top scientist, studied in all these powerful universities back then. And at the age of 50, Christ appeared to him and said, "Okay, stop all this scientific stuff. I'm going to give you access to heaven and hell. I want you to go to both places, interview the beings in both places, and then come back and write about them." Okay?
Whoa.
So, um, kind of the overview is, um, I ran into the works of Swedenborg um, after I was studying the voices schizophrenics heard. Okay,
That's
and
what
when
led
I
you to it then.
well, yeah, that's what got me. It's like, okay, I see these things, I see their behaviors, their running patterns, um, and then I read Swedenborg, and the way he described these, he called them evil spirits. There was a one-to-one correlation with what I was seeing in the psychotic voices of in the state hospital and in the state prisons. I mean,
Whoa.
it was the same thing.
Yep. One
They
and the
ran this
same, and he
one and the
actually called
same.
it what it was.
He called it what it was, and see, psychiatry. I mean, they're pulling the wool over the eyes of the entire planet. You know,
Yeah, I love what
they,
you call them, the psychiatric mafia, because
psychiatric
that's what they
mafia.
are. Yeah, that's what they are, and that's what all these different entities, billion, trillion-dollar industries are. They're straight criminal.
$14.7 billion they're making on lies, on total lies. Their antidepressants don't work. They're worse than if you took nothing.
Say that
And
number again, and that's specifically just the psych.
14.7 billion.
Let that sink in, people.
Let that sink in, and then there's 14 billion, I think, for and 14.7 for antidepressants, and somewhere 14 billion for antipsychotics too, which don't work. I mean, they're basically major tranquilizers. They don't cure anything, and neither do those antidepressants. They cure absolutely nothing.
Well,
You know,
some of the side effects are suicide. I
well,
know that.
yeah. Matter of fact, there's more suicide on antidepressants than there are off them. You know, um, there was an article that just came out not too long ago. Matter of fact, I had it on my on my desk. Let me see if I can find it
And so
on antidepressants.
that's just one organizational aspect of the whole medical industrial mafia complex, right?
Yeah,
14 point what, 6 or 7 billion?
here it is. Antidepressant market in the U.S. expected to reach. Now this is by 2023. Okay, antidepressant market in the U.S. expected to reach 15.98 billion by 2023. And global antipsychotic sales hit 14.54 billion in 2021 and expected to reach 15.5 billion by 2022. So
Wow.
that tells you the whole story. So here's a this just came out. So what happened in back in the 70s? A drug company by the name of Eli Lilly came out with Prozac. Okay, and they here it is. So this is where all this garbage started. It was not until the late 1980s, after the release of the landmark antidepressant Prozac, that the idea of the chemical imbalance hit the psychiatric mainstream. As a psychiatrist, Peter Brigham, 1991, points out in his book Toxic Psychiatry, you want to know the truth about psychiatry, it's in there, and it's startling.
Wow.
It says in his book Toxic Psychiatry, the drug company Eli Lilly advanced the chemical imbalance theory as a marketing scheme to sell their new drug Prozac. They made it up.
There
They
you
totally
go.
made it up. There was no research behind it whatsoever. There was, of course, no demonstrable evidence showing that depressed patients had any imbalance, but Lilly ran with it. Before long, psychiatrists and psychiatric patients alike came to identify with the idea that mental disorders are caused by chemical imbalances in the brain. It's a complete lie. It's a
Yeah,
complete
I mean,
fabrication.
so for like thousands of years, we've known, a lot of people have called evil spirits for what they are. They're evil spirits, or that person has an evil spirit, or that place is haunted. It's engulfed in evil spirits. And here we have the medical industrial mafia complex saying that it's chemical imbalances, or it's in the genes, it's hereditary, right? And it
Right,
couldn't be further
right.
from the truth.
So,
It's a
so
spiritual
well, see,
reality.
and that's the thing. If you're on the wrong path, you're not going to find your way back, because they closed the door with this lie. It's a chemical, and they're teaching it in the universities. They're still teaching it in the universities, and the big pharma has control of the universities. They have
Yeah.
control of the U.S. Congress, and they
Oh
don't
yeah.
want any interference with this $15 billion they're making on antipsychotic drugs. So they don't want the truth to get out. Matter of fact, they have reduced the amount of research they're putting into schizophrenia to a mere dribble of what it was. And then they lie about it and recalculate the statistics so it looks like they're spending a lot of money, because they knock out half the population. They don't look at the ones in nursing homes or mental health centers. They've cherry picked their population to make it look like they're doing a great deal. They're
Yeah.
not doing anything. They do not want a cure for schizophrenia.
No,
It's
all while
very
probably
clear.
making new drugs that might not even be new. There's just a new name to make more money off of. And
Well, what they do is they try to create different drugs with less side effects. But all of those drugs, they're phenothiazines, they rot your brain out. With long-term use, they actually rot your brain out. They turn it into a walnut. They found that out kind of by accident when they were doing autopsies on the brains of patients who were given long-term antipsychotic
is
drugs
this
in
specifically
state
schizophrenic
hospitals.
or just antidepressants in general? You
No,
know?
it's this was specific to schizophrenics and antipsychotic drugs.
Wow.
Okay, so like in the state hospitals, these patients who've been taking these drugs for years, when they died, they did an autopsy and they found out that all their brains were shrunk. And it was like, hey, what's the deal here? So the biochemist, yeah, see, that's the other thing with big pharma and their tentacles. They got their tentacles and everything. They will not allow research like that to be published. They'll cut off the school's funding. You publish that,
Oh
we're
yeah.
your grants are gone.
Yeah.
You know,
Your school's
so
done.
the school's done. They're controlled by big pharma. Matter
Yeah.
of fact, they took over in, I think, 1910 with Carnegie and the Rockefellers. They took over
Wow.
the U.S. medical system and made it a law that the universities had to teach pharmacological medicine, or drugs, as a treatment for illnesses, or they couldn't graduate doctors.
Wow. Yeah. And
They made it a law.
what I understand, that word pharmakia, we get it in the
Yep.
biblical context of the pharmakia, which is sorcery or witchcraft. And there you go. That's where pharmaceutical comes from. But yeah, so can you describe like how you let your license lapse so you can come out and keep talking about this and shining the light on the dark areas of this subject and
Oh
coming out and
yeah,
talking about it from firsthand experience?
I had to. I mean, when I first started talking about it, I went under an alias name, to protect myself, because they would have come after me. They would have
Oh
taken
yeah.
my license and they would have dirtied it up and went, this guy's a weirdo, and we threw him out. taking his license away. So I just let it drop. And last I checked it, it was clean as a whistle. And now they can't touch me. I'm retired. I got my own practice. It doesn't depend on, MACE is a totally different concept than they taught in any university. It's not even in the same ballpark. They wouldn't even know what I was talking about.
Good. That's good.
So back highlighting these antidepressants. Okay.
Right.
It says this is from via molecular psychiatry. It says our comprehensive review of major strands of research on serotonin. So these drug companies are saying that it's a serotonin problem because there's not enough serotonin, or it's a neurotransmitter to keep firing the nerves. So what their drugs are supposed to do is block serotonin reuptake. So the body will fire the nerves and then it will destroy the serotonin. These drugs are supposed to block the destruction of the serotonin so the nerves fire more. And that's supposed to be how these things work.
Yeah.
But these guys are saying major strands of research on serotonin shows there is no convincing evidence that depression is associated with or caused by lower serotonin concentration or activity. It says most studies found no evidence of reduced serotonin activity in people with depression. So major lie that the drug companies have put out.
Yeah, I was going to say, so is that their new claim to fame to keep this chemical imbalance going?
Well, that's what they started with. So Eli Lilly started that lie, and they knew it was a lie at the time, and they pushed it anyway. So then they started teaching it in the universities because they didn't have any explanation for why their drugs worked, even though they didn't work very well at all.
Right.
But they
tranquilize people.
Well, that's the antipsychotic drugs. They tranquilize people. It said well-powered genetic studies effectively exclude an association between genotypes related to serotonin and system and depression. So they knocked out the genetic theory too. Wow. So what these drug companies have done, they started with mothers. The mothers did something. They made some, so everybody could see the mothers went, we didn't do anything. Wait a minute, we're just being mothers, but you could see it. So what they did is they kicked it up into the chemical imbalance, biological thing where you got to be a biologist to study that stuff, and moved it out of the purveyors of psychiatrists and virtually 98% of the population. And the only people who could understand it were the biochemists. And not many of those were interested in studying depression or that kind of. But then when they did study it, they found, wait a minute, there's nothing going on here.
There's no correlation, no link whatsoever.
No correlation. They could not find they couldn't find a gene for schizophrenia. So the psychiatric mafia and big pharma went, well, it's not just one gene, it's a bunch of genes. And they're all entwined, so you can't tell what's what.
Yeah,
but it's the
go
genes,
back to sleep.
We know it's the genes because it's got to be the genes. It's like, and the geneticists are saying we don't see anything. We're the researchers. We don't see anything.
Yeah, don't awaken to the spiritual reality. Go back to sleep.
Don't even think about that.
Wow.
So when they knocked out the genes, then they started with this biochemical imbalance crap, and they're still pushing it. I pulled an article up from one of the major hospitals, and I think it was Cleveland or something, and they're still pushing this, the genetic and the biochemical imbalance theory, to sell their drugs. They don't care whether you get better
billions.
or not. They want to make their billions of dollars, and they don't want any interference with it, at all. So
no, we're just the goyim, they call us.
It's a lie from the start. That's why I call these guys a psychiatric mafia. I mean, they're so duplistic. It's incredible, and their DSM is the same way. Their Bible of psychiatric disorders.
Yeah, that they created to keep
they created.
Yeah, on the line of these are the ways and the only way and the only thing. Yeah. Don't question our authority.
Oh no, you don't want to do that. Believe me, you don't want to do that.
Yeah. So how did you get started in this way back in the day and going to school and coming up through this and wanting to be a psychologist or wanting to help people like this?
Well, when I first ran into abnormal psychology, I was fascinated. It's like, okay, what's going wrong with these people? And they didn't put anything in the abnormal psychology books about what was going wrong. They just put
Right.
in all these descriptions of these different, disorders.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what's going on here? There was no answer to it. They had no answer to it other than this bullcrap that I just mentioned,
Yeah. Yeah.
that, and, it was all these descriptions. So, um, it was fascinating, but they had no answers. It was like, okay, why is this happening? They, there was no answers to it.
Jeez.
So I figured, well, they'll teach me in psychology what's going on. No, they didn't teach anything. They taught their DSM thing,
Right.
which is another major lie on their part. You know, it's they made that whole thing up. There's
Yep.
there's almost 1,000 different diagnoses in there. Yeah, and they were teaching this in graduate school like it was the Bible. I mean, they were teaching it like it was the Bible. You must learn this. You must learn all these data, and we're going to give you tests on this stuff. I didn't know at the time it was completely fabricated. There is
Right. And
not
you're getting
one.
indoctrinated with this, so
You're
you just
getting
go with the flow.
indoctrinated,
Go with the
right?
flow. Go with the flow.
And the indoctrination in the PhD program was the most intense that I'd ever experienced. I could feel them warping my head, and I didn't want to go
So,
there.
so that's the point where you're allowed to prescribe people these things, right? Or
No,
you able to do that before
I
then?
was in a psychology PhD program. I wasn't a psychiatrist,
Oh, okay, gotcha.
but still they were teaching this DSM
To back
because
up,
they're right on the tail of the psychiatrists, you
right?
know.
Yeah.
So you got to memorize their Bible.
Jeez.
What I didn't know was it was completely fabricated, because you open it up and here's this line after line of these categories and major categories and subcategories and all these numbers and classifications and subclassifications. It really looks like a scientific piece of work. You go, oh, look at this. Oh,
And you're going to a
yeah.
university to get degrees so you can be a specialist in that area. So you would think
And
they're
that,
educating you with
so you
stuff.
have
No.
to you have to learn that junk. What I
Wow.
didn't know at the time was it was completely fabricated, completely made up by a group of
Jeez.
psychiatrists that meet once every few years,
Wow.
2/3 of which are associated with big pharma. So what I heard is that meeting is like a tobacco barn. There you get all these psychiatrists meet together, and some guy comes in. He goes, "Hey, I got a new mental illness, and this is what it is." And da 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 da. And then they go, "Well, could we make a medicine for that? We make something to treat that." And you go, "Oh yeah, I think we might. Okay, put it in there." You know,
We make
so
billions off of this one.
we'll make billions off of this one. So in 1952, the DSM had 106 psychiatric disorders.
In what year?
1952. In
Wow.
1980, there were 256 psychiatric disorders. Now, the DSM-5 has 297 psychiatric disorders. They're making up new ones every couple of years.
Yeah, I bet you it's just going to keep going up, and more
Yep,
drugs,
going to
more
be going up.
billions,
And
more
there
lives
are
destroyed.
right. There are no defining diagnostic lab tests for any of those diagnoses. There is no objective test for any of them.
If
There's
it's
no
a
lab
chemical,
test. There's no blood work. There's no EEG. There's no EKG. There is no medical test for any of them. They don't exist.
yeah,
These
like I
things are
heard you say before that if it's a chemical imbalance, why isn't there any biological test, blood samples, anything like that? There isn't.
yeah. And if you don't believe it and you're going to a psychiatrist, you ask yourself, did they give you any kind of test before they prescribed that drug for your chemically imbalanced brain? The answer is no, they
Mhm.
didn't, because they don't have one. They
Right.
never did.
Wow.
So you would think if it was a chemical imbalance of your brain, which they're telling the whole planet,
Yeah,
that they would
everybody.
have something to measure the baseline.
So
You
isn't
know,
this is like some kind of freaking evil genius, man,
it
just to
is.
suck the life out of people. It's like they're working with the entities to downsize the population, to destroy the people who they think are goyim or less than, make billions of money, then continue in their agendas of pumping other ways to destroy us.
well, yeah, and they're doing a pretty good job because, like I said, those antipsychotic drugs destroy the brain. And this thing on the research, on antidepressants, it says people are better off without them. Counseling works better than antidepressants. They're
There you
50,
go.
50, yeah, 50, 50, 50,000, 50,000, I think it was.
Jeez.
Yeah, 50,000. So here's the report card for these clowns, the psychiatric mafia. So there are almost 50,000 people every year kill themselves in the US. That's as many as were killed in Vietnam, the whole war. This is year after year after year after year. Most of these people are on antidepressant drugs, right?
Yeah, and it
There's,
went through the roof with the whole COVID thing and lockdown, don't socialize.
yeah, what's even more, and we'll see that the demons, they run patterns, and I'll get into those. But this is the bottom line. You know, we have more psychiatrists, we have more psychologists, we have more psychiatric drugs on this planet than ever before in human history. And this is happening. 50,000, and this is just the US. 50,000 people in the US every year are killing themselves. You know,
And
the
you said that's
CDC
more than
report.
anybody that died in Vietnam, our soldiers or
Well,
whatever.
that's about the death toll for Vietnam. 50,000. You know, for the whole war. The CDC reports 132 people in the US kill themselves every single day. Right? Suicide is the 11th leading cause of death in the US. You know, between 2000 and 2018, the suicide rates increased 37%. This is what the plethora of psychiatrists, psychologists, and their antidepressant drugs and their antipsychotic drugs and all the garbage that they come up with. You know, so the suicide rate between 2006 and 2016 has been increasing 2% a year, with 1.4 million suicide attempts in 2017 and 47,000 deaths. Okay. Does this look like an effective mental health program? This is a joke. If I were to grade these people, they would get an F minus.
Yeah. Well, they would be. Yeah.
This is the psychiatric mafia at work. You know, feeding the entire population lies. You know, oh, it's a chemical imbalance, and we're the only ones that can treat it. We're the only ones with antidepressants, and you can't get these antidepressants without going through us.
Yeah, so, and it's all back to that
and it's all priest. back to the money. So in the US, if you've got a depression, you want to go see a psychiatrist, and the waiting list to go see these bozos is months. You know, so you walk into a psychiatrist's office, you're not going to come out of there without a diagnosis and some kind of drug. That's what they do. They're the drug dispensers for big pharma.
Yeah.
You know, and they're bought off by big pharma. I mean,
I looked at them like, you know, the priest in white lab coats of, you know, they know everything. They're the specialists, do what they say. They speak death over you. They speak life over you, or this pill or that pill. And it's all about the pills.
It's all about the pills, and they don't want to be challenged.
Nope.
You know, so, but you put 10 of them together and you give them a semi-complex diagnosis, they're going to come up with 10 different diagnoses. You know, they can't even agree among themselves. So this DSM is a totally objective thing. You know, they go, well, I think it's this, and they start off with the medicine they think they ought to give. I mean, there's no science to it at all. Yeah. I mean, it's totally subjective.
You know what? I had a honest psychologist professor. I tried to go to college; it wasn't for me. But I had an honest psychologist professor, and he said to us, he was talking about aspirin and how it didn't work and all these other side effects and stuff that it causes. And then he said that, well, the medical field is a practice. Why do you think it's still called a medical practice? He's like, they're basically just throwing stuff at you to see what will stick.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, back in 2006. So I just thought that was interesting from his point of view to say that in the community college. I was like, whoa.
Well, yeah, he was telling the truth. Yep. So here's a psychiatrist who was speaking the truth. He says every single one of these mental illnesses were fabricated by breaking up segments of human behavior and pathologizing them. There are no blood tests, there are no lab tests, there's no x-rays, there's no EEGs to validate a single one of these psychiatric diagnoses. They're just classes of behaviors that a group of psychiatrists have voted to be a mental disorder. This
Wow.
is by Julian Whitaker, a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
So look at some of these diagnoses they've come up with. Mathematics disorder. If you don't like math, you're disordered.
I got that one.
I got that one too. I got that one big time. I get this next one. And these are in the DSM now, right now.
Wow.
Caffeine intoxication disorder. Drink too much coffee, man, you're disordered. Something wrong with you. Sibling relational disorder. So you got a couple of kids fighting with
that.
Yeah, you got a couple of kids fighting with each other. They got a sibling relational disorder now. You know? Sexual orientation disturbance, homosexuality. Okay, this is evil stuff. I mean, this is lie after lie, duplicity after duplicity on the entire planet. The whole Western mental health system has been hoodwinked by these people.
Yeah, it's an all-out onslaught.
And it gets wilder. Florence syndrome. Okay, being overwhelmed by beauty, such as in Florence, Italy. Symptoms are fainting and dizziness. Treatment is with antidepressant drugs.
Wow, of course. Of course, the treatment is their pharmacia.
But it's even wilder than that. There's something called the Paris syndrome. And I was speaking to a broadcaster in France last night, and she was aware of this, called the Paris syndrome. Mostly Japanese patients visiting France. Symptoms include depression, anxiety, feelings of persecutions, which before in the DSM, before the DSM came along, would be called cultural shock. But they call it Paris syndrome.
Yeah, I wonder what they would have had for me, because my parents raised me in Washington State, and at the age of 9 in 1988, they moved down to Los Angeles in the height of drug, and I had huge culture shock. So I wonder what they would have called that.
Well, it would have been a probably Las Vegas syndrome or something like that.
Los Angeles gang.
They would have come up with something for it. So this is a system of duplicity. The whole thing is a system of duplicity. They've scammed the entire Western world, and who's going to stand up to them?
Yes.
After 45 years on the front lines, I mean, and I've worked in all kinds of, virtually every kind of psychiatric institution that they have in the United States, mental health centers, private psychiatric hospitals, state psychiatric hospitals. The last 10 years I spent doing psych crisis in emergency rooms. I was in mental health centers. I worked in virtually every kind of mental health treatment facility that they have to offer in the US. And never, ever have I seen a researcher on the front lines. They won't allow them in.
So what
they won't allow them in.
Yeah. So like what that, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. You have to be somebody like me that they went through their brainwashing. Right. And then woke up while you're in the system and going, what is going on here? Wait, this doesn't make sense, but you don't dare say that at the time, because they'll crush you.
Oh yeah. They will
crush you. I remember when I started asking schizophrenics in the state hospital, what are these voices telling you? Because you could clearly see that the voices were driving their behavior.
Right.
I wasn't clear how that was happening, but you could see that the voices were, and it was always in a bad direction. So not one of there were hundreds of staff. I mean, the state hospital I worked in was called Central State Hospital in Central Georgia. There were 10,000 patients there when I got there. And that was down from like 21,000, a decade before. It was massive. It was the size of a small city. It was in the middle of nowhere. I mean, they had their own food factory to prepare food. They had their own heating units, a big building that produces heat for the complex. They had their own staff dorms. Thank heavens. Helped me pay off my student loans living in those staff dorms. But it was massive. And they had every kind of mental illness known to man in there. And
Jeez.
one thing that struck me as odd is not one of those people were the least bit interested in what the voices were telling these patients.
Yeah.
Not one. It's like, well, what are these voices? Oh, they're hallucinations. That's what they were
Yeah.
taught in school. They didn't question that, you
Yeah.
know?
So back to what that doctor was saying on that report. From my understanding and my take of it is what I've known them as being a minister, and I'm not your typical minister. Obviously, I got tattoos, and I believe Jesus didn't come to bring Christianity; he came to bring the kingdom of heaven, that we might be back to our original state and back to reunited to God the Father as sons and daughters of the living God. But I know these things like a demon. If you break down that word, is a disembodied spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And so
And
what does
that's
a
what they are.
yeah, and so what does
That's
a
exactly what they
disembodied
are.
spirit want? It wants a body, a host to manifest their personalities through. And so like when that guy's describing these personalities, that's like right on to what I know I've been dealing with, and God's been training me up and helping people navigate and get set free of for years. And so it's so amazing to hear it from your perspective and your profession of going through this maze of prisons that they have people stuck in, and other people coming into these professions thinking I'm going to do good and help somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. They get disillusioned fairly quickly because, they don't have access to the truth. They've been brainwashed. So here I come into this massive psychiatric institution. I mean, they had these 3-story buildings just all over the place. I think the size I think they had 3,000 acres, and it was the size of a small city.
Dude,
And you can see the ruins of it now. You can go on YouTube and you can see they closed it down
what is
back
it?
in
What's
the.
it called?
It was called Central State Hospital. It used to be called the Georgia Lunatic Asylum, I believe it was. They still had that on the side of one of the buildings on the cornerstone.
Whoa, and that's in Georgia?
Yeah, that's in Georgia.
Wow, I'll have to check that
So
out there.
it's one of the most haunted places in Georgia right now.
Wow. So when you ended up there, is that where you were doing some of your schooling and actual work,
I,
where they
I
were
did
allowing you to go in and
well, I did my internship there, and then after I finished my internship, I was hired on the staff.
oh wow.
So
So
that's when
that's
I
where you got
started
your like
seeing.
start.
That's where I got my start. It
Wow.
was one devil of a start.
Yeah,
It
can
was
you tell
like,
us some of your experiences there and stuff? And is
oh
that where
boy,
like
I'll
you
tell you.
fully awakened, or you were just like, hey, something's off, or?
Well, it was more like something's off, and one of the things I was just amazed that I'd ask all the staff, well, what are these voices they're hearing? You
Right.
know, what are they saying? What are they doing? Oh, they're just hallucinations. These are crazy guys. These are just hallucinating. Don't pay any attention to them. That's all. Well, some of the more honest ones would say, well, we don't know. I don't know what they are.
Well, at
You
least
know,
that's the truth.
but the psychiatrists were all brainwashed. They're all
Right.
hallucinations as far as they can tell. And the way they suggested to the patient was to just ignore them. They're hallucinations. Take your pills and or ignore them. I remember one day in
Did
with a
that work?
psychiatrist. No,
Of course not.
I called. I was in there and I was in the office with the psychiatrist, and he increased the guy's medicine. He said, just ignore them. They're hallucinations. I called that guy up about 2 weeks later, and I said, how's that working for you? And he said,
Yeah.
doesn't work at all. They get louder. They get more persistent. So I started asking all the other schizophrenics. I mean, what happens when you ignore them? They get louder. Every single one. They get louder. So
Whoa.
I had no dearth of schizophrenics to ask questions to.
Right.
But what I did run into is, of course, I didn't know it at the time, but the voices didn't like that. They didn't like me asking questions, and I wasn't even sure what they were back then.
Right.
I knew something was off, but I'm not
Right.
quite sure what it was.
So you're
And then,
investigating it, and then how far into investigating it would you try to stay out of the limelight of your colleagues and other
oh
people
yeah,
that
yeah,
know you're
yeah,
not supposed to be doing that?
yeah. I kind of tried to, especially after I got in trouble with it by psychiatry. So one of the patients went and told the psychiatrist, "Hey, this guy's asking me questions, and it's upsetting me, and I don't like it." Next thing I knew, I was in his office on the red carpet, and he was ordering me to stop asking questions about the voices. He said they are hallucinations, you know,
And that's it.
by asking questions about them, you're reinforcing them. You're reinforcing the hallucinations and you're making the patient worse. And he ordered me to stop asking questions about them. By then, I knew that I wasn't making the patient worse,
Right.
but what I was getting is a lot of resistance to them answering questions about the voices. And
Mm.
took me about a year to get to where I could talk to them about them and figure out what was going on with them. And basically, what's going on with them
Well,
is
see,
there's no
isn't that one of the main things, Jerry, is they don't want you to know them about them. They don't
yes,
want you to
that's exactly
disturb,
right.
know who they are.
That's exactly right. They don't want anybody knowing about them. They're perfectly happy being known as uh,
Oh, I'm angry,
hallucinations.
or I'm this, or I'm that, or
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
hallucinating, or
yeah. They're hallucinations. I mean, it's like, take these drugs that don't do anything about it. They don't stop the voices for the most part. Those antipsychotic drugs, all they are is major tranquilizers. They just calm the guy down.
mm,
They drug them. Basically, they're drugging these guys senseless, so they don't cause any trouble. But they're
yeah,
not curing anything.
yeah. So I
Those
didn't mean
drugs
to
don't
break your,
fix anything.
yeah, I didn't mean to break your train of thought there going through, but yeah, continue on about how you were digging into finding out like what is going on here because something's off, and then you got taken into the room and saying, "Hey, don't do that. We told you, and you've been indoctrinated. These are hallucinations. You're making them worse. Stop
Right.
asking them questions."
Well, that happened twice. It happened with two different psychiatrists, even though I
Wow.
was more careful the second time.
Yeah.
You know, so they don't want you asking questions. They don't want you finding out the truth.
No.
You know,
No.
and that didn't stop me, but it really did slow me down because I was already
Walking on
distrustful of
thin
what they were
ice.
doing, and I'd mouth off from time to time like, what's this all about? They didn't like questions. They did not like questions.
So
They
isn't
were
that
they were
interesting? The people in charge don't like you to ask questions. The evil entities definitely don't want you
don't
asking
like you
questions and
asking. They don't.
finding out who
Nobody
they
wants you
are.
asking
So
questions.
who's the patient here? You know what I'm saying? Just because they're calling it out, but you're saying that's them, but you're infested with the same thing over here, just making millions of dollars. And yeah, wow.
Yeah, so there was a lot of things that didn't add up. You know,
Yeah.
so I did notice one of the first things I noticed is that if it's a chemical imbalance in the brain, which is what they taught us and which they taught everybody else who went to work there. So this was part of their indoctrination. You know, this is what it is. You must believe us
Right.
because we're the they were like the high priests of ancient Egypt.
Exactly.
They go,
Exactly.
we're the ones. You must believe us because we're psychiatrists and we went to school. We got a medical degree and we know what's going on.
We have the staff
They don't
pole
know
with the
nothing.
snake wrapped around it. We're the
Right, right,
pharmakia kings. You don't
right.
do anything unless we tell you to.
And don't dare question us either.
Yeah.
You know. So
Wow.
I was onto their scam when I saw that they had no tests. They weren't giving any test for a baseline.
Right.
For a chemical brain
Chemical
imbalance.
imbalance or anything.
So
Yeah.
so if they had no tests, then they didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
They were just going
What do
into
you
this
base it off
this
of?
they have nothing to base it off of. They just
Yeah.
went into this chest of drugs and they went, well, let's try these, see how they work, and bring the guy back in a week and go, well, how are those drugs working for you? Well, I don't like them. Why? Or try these. And if that doesn't work, I'll try these. It's like this dartboard that they just keep going round and around and around. So I saw that for myself. I mean, it was like, well,
Right.
what are they doing? What are these people doing? They're
Yeah.
just drugging these people. They're drugging them silly. And the patients kept going off of those drugs,
By
you know,
themselves, they go off of
by
them.
themselves. They go off them. I mean, they would not stay on those drugs are horrendous. I mean, they're awful. The side effects are just god awful. So even though they had their sanity, they were still going off these drugs. And
Wow.
so
If
what
that
what
isn't
what
a
I,
study right there, I don't know what it is.
well that got me curious because I'm going, well, why are they going off the drugs that are keeping them sane? And they did keep them sane. They recovered their sanity. They were doped up, but
Yeah.
they weren't, totally dysfunctional. They were still hearing the voices, but they weren't loud. They weren't taking over.
They weren't
You know,
acting out.
they weren't acting out. They weren't causing problems. Um, they a lot of them still couldn't work. You know, but I was working for a psychiatric vocational rehabilitation center with the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation at the time. So what we were trying to do is give these people a trade like a beautician or
Yeah.
barber or basic auto mechanics or janitor or something like beautician, something that they can make a living off of when they left. And what I saw is as they if they were schizophrenic, as they were about to graduate, they would do something to screw themselves up. They would either get into a fight or get into an argument with the professor or the teacher, or they would go off their drugs.
They don't like them being free in any way, shape, or form,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
anything good.
yeah.
No.
So they had a rule. It based, I think at least on our section there was a rule: you go off your drugs 3 times. And back then, that's all we had. If that was all, that was the only treatment they had. Trying to do regular counseling with the schizophrenics like shooting a rhino in the butt with a BB rifle. It just doesn't work.
It's not happening. Yeah.
Now the mace system, it works to a degree, a big degree. It'll get rid of a lot of the trauma that they face, and a lot of times it will actually get rid of an entity, but not all the time, depending on how strong the entity is. But we'll get rid of a lot of the trauma that they feed off of. Totally different concept than anything they taught in school. But I was wondering, like, okay, why are these guys choosing to go insane? They go off their
Right.
meds. Are they choosing to go insane?
Right.
Because if they went off their meds 3 times, they'd get kicked out of the program because all we had back then was the drugs. And if they weren't going to take their drugs, they couldn't maintain
We
their
can't help
sanity. And
you.
if and they couldn't maintain their sanity, they can't work. All right. So if they went off their drugs 3 times while they're in training, we said, okay, you're not going to stay on your drugs when you get out either. So we would discharge them. So I was wondering about that. And the ones who went off, I'd bring back into the office and I'd said, you've gone off your drugs before, and each time you went crazy. Why are you going off your drugs? Do you
Huh.
want to go crazy? But no, we don't want to go crazy. Then why are you going off your drugs? Well, the side effects. That was what all of them said. The side effects are horrendous. Okay, so what I did is I went to the DSM and I copied down all the characteristics of paranoid schizophrenia. All of them, all the horrible effects, the hallucinations, the paranoia, the being chased by demons. I mean, all that stuff. And then I would give them a blank sheet of paper and I'd say, write down all the side effects you felt from the drug you were taking, because they didn't all have the same side effects.
Right.
Yeah. And it's write them all down. They'd write down a half dozen, and then I'd give them this check sheet of all the psychotic symptoms. I'd say, check which of these symptoms you had when you were crazy, when you were psychotic. Which of these did you experience? And they check all these, paranoia, all these horrible things, lack of sleep, the side of, all that stuff. And I'd hand them back to them. And I'd say, which one's worst? 100% of the time, they said the symptoms of schizophrenia were much worse. And then I'd ask them, then why do you go off your meds? Their answer was, for 3 solid years, I don't know.
Wow.
3 solid years. I don't know. I felt like a crazy guy asking them the same question over and over and getting the same answer.
Yeah.
Until one day, it was like the last year I was working at that state hospital. It was the 7th year. And one girl who was doing good in cosmetology class, made good grades. She went off her meds for the third time. We were about to throw her out of the program. And her mother found that out. She said, please don't do that. I can't handle her. I can't deal with her here. I'll come up there and we'll talk and we'll find out why she went off her meds. So I felt sorry for her. I said, okay, come on up, and we'll talk. And so it was one Friday afternoon. The mother showed up, the girl showed up, and the mother and I closed the door of the office, and we're asking her the question, like, why did you go off your meds again?
Right.
You know you were going to be kicked out of the program if you went off a third time. Why did you do that? You were doing good. You made good grades. You know, you would make a good cosmetologist. Well, why? And she goes, well, you won't believe me. And I go, well, you know, I've heard a lot of strange things since I've been working here. Try me.
Yeah.
And she says, okay. She said, now, she said, the voices told me that the psychiatrist was poisoning me. And she
Oh,
pointed to all the side effects of the medications. At the voices pointed to all the side effects of the medications and telling her she was being poisoned. And these were the symptoms of her being poisoned by psychiatrists.
whoa. The voices told her she was getting
Right.
poisoned by the
By
psychiatrist.
psychiatry. And these were the symptoms, the side effects. You know,
Whoa.
and you know, I have a list of some of those side effects somewhere. But you know, they're awful here. Well, these are these are just for antidepressants. Okay, so you're taking you're feeling depressed. And I want to get back onto that later because
Yeah.
that thing with that. But these are the side effects of antidepressants. So you look at this, and these people are already feeling depressed.
Yeah. That's why
Okay,
they're coming to
that's why
get
they're coming in.
treatment.
So they give them antidepressant drugs, SSRIs, that have side effects of nausea, weight gain, dry mouth, blurred vision, dizziness, anxiety, headache, diarrhea or constipation, sexual problems, fatigue, tremors, increased swelling, lower alcohol tolerance, bleeding, lower sodium levels, vomiting, restlessness, muscle cramps, seizures.
Still going, right? There's still more.
Yep, yeah, still
Jeez.
going. You know, so this is what they're feeding these poor people.
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
yeah, take these antidepressant drugs, you feel better. Most of them didn't. So one thing I noticed when I first got to the state hospital was that psychiatrists were being assaulted by patients at a much higher level than any other staff members, except for the attendants who were working with these patients 24 hours a day. You would expect that they would get assaulted at a higher rate.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
they're
They're
there
the
all
one
the
dealing
time
with
with them.
them all the time.
And the assault rate with psychiatrists who were only spend maybe 20 minutes a month with them was virtually identical with that of the attendants. So it didn't make any sense to me for years. So when this girl
Whoa.
told me that, I said, now it all makes sense. That's why they're being assaulted at a higher rate. The voices
Wow.
are telling the patient that they're poisoning them, and the voices are telling them to attack the psychiatrist. They didn't attack
Wow.
psych nurses. They didn't attack regular nurses. They didn't attack counselors or psychologists. They didn't attack regular doctors. It was psychiatrists who they were beating up.
So you
And
got this
psychiatrists,
person that's coming to get help, and you got these entities that are sucking the life force out of them. And then you got the doctor over here that's feeding them these pills, that's sucking the life force out of them. So the entities are mad that the doctors are giving them stuff that's and not letting them suck the full life force out of them.
right?
What?
See the entities, they want them upset. They want them generating that negative emotional energy, and those drugs drug them up. They're tranquilizers. They're not producing a lot of negative emotional energy when they're tranquilized.
Right.
So
None.
these
Yeah.
entities they're not getting fed, you know, and they're pissed off about it. And they know the psychiatrists are the ones that are doing it. Now, another thing that's interesting is the
So how
suicide
is that
rate.
a hallucination? Is what I was going to say.
Well,
If they know, you know what I
it's
mean? Yeah.
manifesting in physical reality.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that's interesting is the suicide rate for schizophrenics is 3 to 5 times that of the normal population. They
Oh
kill
yeah.
themselves at a much higher rate. The voices tell them to. I mean,
Yeah.
they out and out, they'll tell you, you know. But psychiatrists have an almost identical suicide rate. So their
Did
suicide
you hear
rate is
that, people?
equivalent.
Say that again.
Yes, psychiatrists have an almost identical suicide rate to that of their most disturbed patients,
Whoa.
the schizophrenics.
Wow.
They kill themselves at that almost an identical rate. And these are the high priests that are in charge of our mental health system. You know,
Yeah, because they're infested, obviously, and giving themselves over to that system, and they've got the same entities, at probably at higher levels doing this crap in them.
well,
Wow.
they can see that these things don't do, they're not curing anybody. Nobody's
Right.
being cured by these drugs. And in the case of antidepressants, most people aren't being helped by them either.
No.
You know, so these 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 voices, the more I ask, the more I ask the patients questions about them. While I was at the state hospital, there were three, four, four major um, patterns that I found. Okay, number one was that these voices were consistently and persistently negative. They were always calling the patient, you're rotten, you're no good, you're ugly, you're stupid, you're meaningless, you're worthless, nobody likes you. Um, every rotten thing that you could think of, these voices were telling these people.
Yep.
You're never going to succeed at anything. You're worthless. Um, over and over, and it there wasn't any balance to it. There wasn't any. Sometime they were negative, sometime they were positive, sometime they were
No.
neutral. You know,
Right. No.
they were
Yeah.
consistently negative.
Hmm.
So my question was, and that this is after questioning hundreds of them, hundreds of schizo, they're all saying the same thing. You
Yeah.
know,
Not connected whatsoever
they
naturally.
didn't know each other at all. No.
Yeah.
So my question is what held them on such a negative track? Why aren't they random? Why aren't they all over the place like regular hallucinations? Why
Right.
why aren't they, sometimes they don't make any sense? Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're somewhere in between. Why isn't there a gamut like there are with real hallucinations?
Right.
That didn't appear. They were
Right.
consistently and persistently negative.
Yep.
My question was, what held them on such a negative path? You know, so then it started coming up that, a lot of these patients kind of felt that, well, maybe if I turn to God, he can help me. So they started reading the Bible. They started trying to go to
Did you say
church.
the majority of people did that or had
No,
that
I wouldn't
inkling
say,
or no?
no, schizophrenics, there were just some, but it was interesting because they
Yeah.
they would get a kickback when they tried to do that. And that's what the study of, like, what happened to you when you go to church, you know, where the voices would actually kick up in there. If they were strong, they'd kick up, they'd start mocking the preacher.
Yep.
They'd start saying,
Manifesting.
see, this is worthless, this is stupid, why you're wasting your time in here. You know.
Guilt,
So
shame, and condemnation.
uh, so I remember one patient came to me and said that when he prayed the 23rd Psalm, his voices reacted like worms thrown onto a hot frying pan. I said, that happens every time you pray the 23rd Psalm? And he said, yeah. And I went, well, that's interesting.
Take note of
So
that.
I took note of it. That's how it happened. I'd hear something like that, and then I'd start asking all the others. Hey, you ever prayed the 23rd Psalm? Yeah, no. Well, here, take this with and pray it
Try it
during the
out.
week, and come back and tell me what happens, what the voices do with it. And it would come back. They hated it.
Wow.
So it was part of the armor that I would give them. You know, um, they hated the 23rd Psalm. The
Wow.
demons hate the 23rd Psalm. They
Oh
can't
yeah.
stand it. It's like punching them in the face. You know.
So yeah, so you're going through this, and then you get the 23rd Psalm. What kind of other experiences did you have at just the where you started at the Georgia Central State Hospital?
Well,
What
all
and
these
what
things.
happened to that gal? Did she get
Well,
kicked out of the program?
no, I didn't kick her out. I left her in. She
Oh,
gave me too
awesome.
much good information. I was appreciative to her. So
Nice.
anti-religious was the second pattern that I found that these voices run. They don't like them reading the Bible. If they try to read the Bible, they'll go, and one of their tricks I've heard over and over again is the patient starts reading the Bible. The voices don't like it. but they go, I'm going to read it anyway. Whether you like it or not, I'm still going to read it. They're determined to do it.
Wow.
So the voices said, if you're going to read it, then you got to read it from cover to cover. All right. So they go, okay, I'll read it from cover to cover. Then they hit that place in the Bible. I don't know exactly where it is, where this guy begat that guy, begat that guy. And it goes on for like 15 pages of who begot who
Yeah,
forever.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
voices jump back in there and they go, why are you reading this garbage? What are you getting out of this? This is stupid. Why are you reading this nonsense? And they knock them out at that point.
Wow.
And that's happened over and over and over. It's
Multiple
almost like
times.
it's almost like these things are schooled at some dark school in the ethers somewhere. I mean, they all
Yeah.
react the same way. So these patterns, they're the same at the state hospital. They were the same as they were in the prison when I worked in Arizona, 2,000 miles away. And now that I have my own private practice, they're the same all over the planet.
Wow.
They don't differ from place to place. It's like they're all made from
Right.
some cosmic cookie cutter somewhere. They all behave the same way, which is weird.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all anti-religious. They don't like the church. They don't like the Bible. They don't like the 23rd Psalm. They don't like the person praying. They don't like them going to church, consistently.
Right.
The third one is they foster and create negative emotion. They're constantly trying to stir these people up. They want to keep them as angry and upset as possible. They don't want them taking their drugs. They want them angry. They want them anxious, paranoid, full of guilt and shame. And they do this through inserting thoughts into their thought stream.
Right.
So we're all taught from the time we're kids that thoughts are in your brain. They belong to you. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
Thoughts are coming in from outside of you. Swedenborg says you got the thoughts that are coming from heaven and the thoughts you have coming in from hell, and your brain is like a radio receiver. The ones you tune into are the ones where you put your energy. So wherever you focus your thought, you're focusing your energy also. You're giving that wherever you're focusing, you're giving it energy. So the Native Americans would say you have a wolf on either shoulder.
Right.
The ones you feed is the one that's going to grow.
Yeah.
So
There's another. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, there. I was going to tell you. There's another interesting Native American thought in a known thing culturally. I can't remember what tribe or whatever, but they would call your conscious. They would refer to it as your conscious, what we call your conscious, but it would be a triangle in the pit of your stomach. And so it's very sharp, has sharp edges. And so when you would do something bad or go to do something bad, it would turn and it would cause discomfort in the pit of your stomach. And people that I can't remember the name they use, but it's basically somebody who has a seared conscience. They have not listened to the triangle so much that it's rubbed off the corners. So it's just smooth. So they don't even have it anymore.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Swedenborg said your conscience. He says the spirit usually doesn't speak with words. It speaks through feelings, intuition, and conscience. And the few times I've had patients who said they spoke to me was when I was working in the emergency room and these people had attempted suicide, and a voice came to them, and either interfered with it.
Whoa.
Over and over, I watched that. There was one lady who everything had gone wrong in her life. She lost her job. She was about to lose her apartment. She was depressed. Her husband left her. She had a teenage son. Everything was going wrong. She said, "I'm done. I'm out of here. My son can fend for himself or whatever. I'm out of here." So she didn't want to kill herself. She didn't have the nerve to do that. So she went to a railroad track outside of a small town outside of Tucson, and she drugged herself up, got drunk. She's waiting by the side of the track. She was going to drive her car in front of a train.
Wow.
Okay? She was talking to her sister in San Diego, telling her sister goodbye when the train came. So she hung up. She drove her car right in the train track right before the train got there, and the train bashed her threw the car into another track, and it sat in the other track, and a second train came and hit her also. So she was hit by two trains. The second train threw her like 25 yards off the road, and the car was smashed like a crushed Coke can.
Yeah.
They had to cut her out of it.
Oh, I bet.
She could not get out of it in any other way. So here she is sitting in front of me after being hit by 2 trains, and all she had was a black eye. And I'm like, what? Yeah, what? Immediately that got my attention. It's like, I'm all
Yeah.
ears. Yeah, what happened? Tell me what happened. And she said, I said, well, how did you feel when you came to? She said, I was furious. She said, I was absolutely furious. I did not want to be here. I wanted to be dead. I did
Wow.
not want to come back here. I was angry as a hornet.
Wow.
And I said, well, you know, anything else happened? She said, I heard this voice come and it said, everything's going to be okay. And she said, then she
Wow.
felt this very calm feeling just totally come over her, with the knowing that everything was going to be okay. So after talking to her, I didn't feel she was suicidal anymore. And I wrote up my report, but I didn't think psychiatry were going to approve it because they had to approve everything. I'd make a recommendation. They had to approve it. I didn't think they were going to do that after what she had. All she had was a black eye. I'm like, amazing, absolutely amazing. You talk about a guardian angel being with
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
There's no more clear there's no more clear
Clear
example than that one.
definition or example. Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but the psychiatrist let her out. And I
Whoa.
was shocked. I said the whole thing was like amazing, from start to finish, from
Wow.
her story to the psychiatrist letting her out.
Wow.
Blew my
Talk about the
mind.
favor of other unseen realms on your life. Not only
Yeah,
the
yeah.
protection, but then the favor for that to happen.
Oh, there were scores of incidents like that. They were like lobsters used to be. There used to be so many of them. They use them for dog food. There were so many of those stories I heard in the ER. I should have written them down, but I didn't. I only can remember a handful of the most significant ones. There
Yeah,
was
I was
another
gonna say, I
guy.
bet the ER was crazy, huh?
Yeah, the ER was in some ways more dangerous than the prison because they were coming in totally raw,
Right.
totally psychotic, totally drunked up, totally full of drugs. You know, they were in bad shape. You know? But this other fella that ended up there, he had a what is it, 357 Magnum revolver with all the cylinders full. Put it to his head and went click, pointed it at the ground, bang. Put it to his head, click, pointed at the ground, bang. And then he went,
Whoa.
okay, I got it. And he threw the gun away.
Whoa.
Another guy,
Yeah, and the statistics for just one primer not working is like ridiculous.
yeah,
So for
yeah.
two
And
time,
but two,
no, no.
no.
And then
Another
right
guy,
after the next one goes, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Wow.
another guy, 45 pistol. He put it to his head, click. Took that same round out to the range the next day to shoot, put it in the chamber, and it fired. And another guy, this was interesting. The voices told him, they said, you know, fill your, take your car, take your pistol, drive your car out into the desert until you run out of gas, then stop and shoot yourself. Okay, so he was going to do that. He took his pistol, his car ran out of gas. He stopped by the side of the road. He walked out in the desert. He sat down on something, and he cocked the gun. And he was about to shoot himself. And he said this bird came out of nowhere. He said it was a very strange bird. He said he'd lived in the desert all his life, but he'd never seen a bird like that before. And it started screaming at him, just screaming at him, just. Rah, rah. So he got the gun and he shot at the bird. And when the gun went off, he woke up. And he's looking at the gun in his hand and he's going, what was I going to do? So these voices have a hypnotic effect.
Whoa.
You know,
Yeah, I've seen it.
these mass killers that they go
Wow.
out and they shoot a bunch of people and then they wake up and they go, I don't remember doing it because they're not the
Wow.
ones that did it. The demons did it.
Right. People that say they black out drunk or whatever, they don't
Right.
remember anything.
Well, blackout drunk is a different thing, but these,
Yeah, but along the same lines to where he comes out of it, right? And he's
yeah,
like,
he
how the
came out
heck
of
am
it.
I here? And what is this doing in my
Right.
hand?
The shot woke him up. So he was like in a
Wow.
daze. and that's what happened to a lot of them. They did something horrendous, and then something snapped them out of it. They don't remember doing it. So the demons take over.
Yep.
Which would cause a problem for the legal system. But they, since they can't get the demons out, they lock the demons and the person in prison. They both go.
Jeez. Yeah. So
Um,
from my experience in too is you can be demonized versus demon possessed, and I believe we're all demonized to some certain degree, because you can be a perfectly normal person, but then you'll be driving down the road, you won't even have to get angry at anybody, and you'll be having a good time listening to your favorite song, whatever, and then a weird thought comes to your mind that's destructive, or like you said, negative in some way, and you're like,
right.
where did that
Where
come
did
from?
that
That's
come
not
from?
me.
Exactly.
I
A lot of
rebuke.
people say they have thoughts of, what would it be like to drive into oncoming traffic, or you're standing on a high bridge and there's a voice saying, "Well, why don't you jump?" You know,
Yeah.
Stuff like that, which brings into another dimension. So, these things hit us all. They don't just hit
Hmm.
schizophrenics; they hit us
Right.
all the time.
Yep.
You know, so you have a thought stream running all the time in your head. It's its voice babbling in your head, telling you all this stuff that you already know. Telling you all this bad stuff about yourself, telling yourself about everybody else. It's just rambling on and on and on, and people think that's who they are. But the question becomes, if that's who you are, then who's listening to all that crap?
Yeah, exactly. Like
You're
you
the one
said,
listening to it.
yeah, exactly.
And
Like
see,
you said, we're a receiver, kind of like a radio frequency antenna, and
so
we
you have
give
to watch what you receive. You have to watch
exactly,
what you and
because
the
you're the
voices.
multiplier, right?
Yep.
You're the multiplier. If it's
Yeah.
negative, it's going to be multiplied. If it's positive, it's going to be multiplied.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the only effect they can have in the physical universe, is to take somebody over, to subvert their behavior or take over their behavior, because they can't they have no effect for the most part otherwise. They have to take
Yeah.
somebody over or convince them to do something awful to feed.
Yeah, so
So
that's
they
interesting. So can you talk about that in the context of addicts and stuff, and how those entities like will basically get their lust and their personalities across, and getting people to do things because the entities like it more than maybe the human, or I mean the person.
Yeah, I remember one time, alcoholics. I mean, until I got to the prison, I didn't have and I went to all kinds of training. I mean, all these alcohol conferences and stuff. And one day I was told that there was an Apache. He was up in northern Arizona on the Apache reservation there, and he was so drunk and violent that not even the Apache police could deal with him. And I don't know if you probably never saw Apache police. I mean, I remember I saw one down in the bottom of the Grand Canyon. The Havasupai tribe hired them because they were so vicious. And I watched
Wow.
this one chase some guy down. I mean, he was a monster of a guy, and he's chasing somebody. He was after somebody. I'm glad he wasn't after me. But the Apache police were sending him to prison, and
Wow.
he was just going. He was barging right through the system. He didn't even stop in the classification center, and he was heading for my unit.
Look
So
out, Jerry.
yeah, so I heard he was like an evil Indian medicine man, alcoholic guy. So he
Wow.
wasn't he wasn't like a good shaman. He was like a
Yeah,
bad shaman kind of guy.
right.
And when he got there, I pulled him into my office and I said, "I'm the psych for this unit. I'll be watching over you. You're on psych drugs, and I got to keep an eye on you." And you could just feel the hatred roll off him. He just hated white people, and I could just feel it. I mean, it was like, okay, I'm telling you, I'm going to be in touch with you from time to time. Now you can go. So after I felt that, I went to the head of. I always got along good with the Native Americans on the yard. I helped them all the way, all I could. And I went to the
That's
head of
awesome.
the Native Americans. He was a Navajo guy, an elderly Navajo guy. He was a
Wow.
bad diabetic. And I asked him, I said, "What's with this guy?" He said, "You be careful with him." That was his warning. You be careful with him.
So if he
But
says that, you better take heed.
you better take heed. So
Yeah.
it took me probably 6 months before I could talk to that guy for 20 minutes. You
Wow.
know, and he started telling me all these stories about being chased by spirits and casting evil spells on people, and running from evil spirits, and doing all this weird stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, one day he and I was interested in that stuff. I'm like, well, because I would never get to meet somebody like him again.
Right.
You know, so I was milking his head for all I could get out of it. And finally, one day, I got the courage up to say, well, if you can do all that stuff, how come you can't stay sober? And I was expecting him to blow up. I mean, I was
Yeah.
just
You were
like
ready
sitting there
for
going,
something.
I'm like,
Oh.
okay, yeah, just like that. And he turned at me, he said, because of the spirits of dead alcoholics, he said. He said there was a bar in Phoenix that he said if he walked by that bar, he said that the spirits of dead alcoholics were piled so high above that bar. He said they disappeared into the sky, and he could see them. He said if he went anywhere near that bar with alcohol in him, they would jump him, and they would try to get in and make him drink more. He said he watched these spirits lead his girlfriend, who apparently was also an alcoholic, onto the highway in front of traffic, and she got hit by a car and killed. And he saw these spirits walking her into the traffic. You know, so and I've heard that several other times from people who get drunk in bars. They hang around in bars, so they're dead alcoholics who can't get drunk anymore in the physical form,
Right.
and in the spiritual form, but they haven't left to go to the other side for some reason. So they have to enter a person's body, somebody who's abusing a drug, in order to get high. So they will jump into an alcoholic once he hits a certain level of uh, intoxication. They'll jump in there and then they'll demand him to drink more, or they'll demand a drug user, go get some more drugs.
See, isn't that funny? Because I would say so. What I've noticed spiritually is people involved in certain sins or whatever you want to call them, in certain bad acts of for themselves, they'll surround themselves with like-minded people to reinforce the normalcy of it and that it is okay.
Right.
And see, Tim's like this, and Tim's my good buddy, and Tim reinforces that in my life. And so, like, it's interesting to see how these different packs of entities, demons, roll like that.
Yeah. And then if anybody tries to break out of it, they go, alcohol has caused so much trouble in my life. I'm done with it. I'm quitting. All the rest of them will start pulling him back in.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
want him to leave.
Yeah.
I've seen that over and over and over again.
Yeah, I've
So
seen that in the natural, with people trying to get out of whatever they're in, drugs, whatever, what have you. Then all of a sudden they'll be presented, and people will be blowing them up. Here's free drugs. Come, free drugs. Come. We have the most
yeah,
amazing circumstances you've always wanted
right.
to have. Yeah,
Yeah, they'll give them to draw them back in.
yeah.
You know, so
Wow.
that's part of the patterns too. And when I would tell alcoholics about that, I just tell them that story, and a lot of them would say that fits. That fits. So they have to realize they're not the only ones drinking or drugging. That they
Right.
have other entities in there that are demanding that they drink and drug also.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's one of the things these negative entities do. A drug addict and an alcoholic, they have lots of negative emotion. So they get furious, and these things. I don't know how many wives of alcoholics I've talked to where they said their husband or their boyfriend, their eyes would turn dark with rage, and they were no longer the same person.
Yeah, they weren't the same person. Yeah, I've heard that
Over and
plenty of
over and
times.
over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that fits in with like the third pattern that these voices run. They foster and create negative emotion. You know,
Yep.
they foster anger, anxiety, paranoia, guilt, shame. They do this through the insertion of negative thoughts into the person's thought stream. So the other thing they can do is with when people are in a low vibrational state, they can see all the negative things that you've ever done in your
Oh
life. They
yeah.
can bring those out and they can throw them at you and
Hmm.
just keep criticizing you over and over again. Well, do you see when you did this, what you did, that you're such a rotten person.
From
Look at all the
years
rotten
ago.
things you did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I had one guy that he didn't pay back a dime debt, like 20 years ago, and they were tormenting him for that. So they can pull up all this rotten stuff and they can throw it in your face to get you to feel that negative emotion. And that's what they feed off of,
Yep.
and that happens to everybody. Oh, why did I say that? Or did I insult this person? Or did they take that, what I said wrong? And you're tormented by that over and over. And humans are the only ones that suffer that. You
Yeah.
watch a lion chase down a gazelle, and the gazelle, he's got his claws on his butt, but he escapes, and then he looks around, that nothing's there. He goes back to grazing again. The whole thing's forgotten.
Yeah.
He doesn't keep going over and over again. Why did I go near that water hole or something, and torment himself over and with that? Only humans do that.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and where do those thoughts come from? The dark side puts them in there.
Yep. Yeah.
So you
The
got you
evil
got to be
entities.
aware. You got to be aware that your thoughts don't come from you.
Yeah, and then you've
You
got
know,
these people that have lived their life that way, right? And they've held
right,
on to all of these things. And what I've found is those entities love to keep it in the dark. And that shame, guilt, condemnation they puke on people's conscience keeps it suppressed. And you want to keep it hidden. You don't dare talk about to somebody to it and bring light to it.
right,
They don't want you to do that. And when you
right.
do
Because
that, that's like the first step of starting to get free.
right, they want you to feel the shame about it, not do anything about it. You
Yeah.
know.
And so these people will hold on to it to their deathbed and then they're trying to unload everything when they know they're going to die. And
I
it's,
know. So I was working with she was a college professor in archaeology day before yesterday, and she had been molested when she was a child, and she was carrying that the entire time, um, because the person who molested her gave her money. So from that time on, she said she couldn't hang on to money because she felt it was dirty. So she never could save money. She
wow.
never had any money, and she was always feeling she was worthless. And this happened when she was 7 years old, and she was in her late 60s when I talked to her.
Wow.
But one thing good about the Mace system, that was gone in an hour. It was out of her
Wow.
universe in an hour.
Wow.
There's no other
Praise God.
psychotherapy that will do that. You know.
Wow.
So these were the first, uh, negativity, anti-religious, foster and create negative emotion. Those were some of the first ones I saw when I was working at the state hospital. They energetically drained their victims. Okay, so those people working with schizophrenics, you can ask them, how do you feel before the voices come, and how do you feel after the
After.
voices come? You know, and consistently they'll tell you, before the voices come, I was feeling kind of okay, but after they came, I was totally drained. And some of them would tell me they were so drained that they couldn't get out of bed in the morning, that they felt like they were working out in the hot sun for hours. That's how drained they were.
Wow.
So I did a little bit of research on that one day, and I started asking. I had a scale, 1 to 10, before the voices come, 1 to 10 before the voices came, after the voices came. And I'd hand them to them. I'd say, pick how much energy you had before the voices. This was just subjective.
Yeah. It's a
I
little
pick,
gauge.
right. So how much energy you have before the voices come? And they go, well, but 6, 7, or 8, something like that. Right. How much you have before, after the voices show up? You know, 1, 2, 3. I mean, the low end of the scale.
Yeah.
And I collected like a bunch of these, and we ran an analysis of variance on it, and it came out statistically significant.
Whoa.
So
Yeah.
these traits that I'm talking about right now, these are patterns.
Yep.
You know, these are patterns that anybody who's working with schizophrenics or lives with a schizophrenic can see for themselves. They
Right.
don't have to they don't have to go through any biological anything. These are the operational definition of the voices.
Right.
And this is what they are. This is how they behave.
Yeah,
you
this
can't
is
see
their
them.
operation.
They're energetic, so you can't see them, you can't
Yeah.
feel them, or most people can't. I can,
Yeah,
but
your spirit can. I know I can.
I can feel them.
Yeah.
So bottom line, if these voices are running patterns, they can't be hallucinations like the psychiatric mafia and big pharma insist they are.
Right. Right.
Hallucinations don't run patterns.
No.
Okay? So
Yeah.
these are the first four I found. Later, I found out they get louder after sunset. Now, the other thing you might want to notice is that virtually all of these things are what's coming over the mainstream media right now.
Right.
All these patterns are coming through the mainstream media. They're coming over ABC, NBC, CNN.
Yep.
Right now, they were coming
Mm-hmm.
over it through COVID. All these patterns were so. This is the microscopic
Yeah, this is
demonic
down to the
entities.
intimate individual
These are
within
the
oneself.
individuals, and what's coming across are the collective of the demonic politicians out there
Yeah,
and the
on the
demonic
outside.
news right now.
Yep.
So they get louder when ignored.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's like the mainstream media. You ignore them, they get louder. They start. I heard that Soros is buying 200 radio stations right before the election. They're getting louder. They're
Wow.
preparing to get louder. You know, they foster self-destructive behavior. You know,
Oh yeah.
look at Canada right now. They're paying to euthanize people. You know, they foster isolation. Look what happened during COVID. Stay in your home. Don't go anywhere. Don't go for Thanksgiving. Don't
Don't
visit your relatives.
socialize.
Don't reason your friend. Don't socialize. Stay in your room and stare at the four walls.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
one thing that I know about that we've learned just any kind of relationship with God is we're better together.
Yeah.
We're
So
better together, more perspectives, more love, reality,
right,
physical hugs,
they don't want any part of that. You
no.
know, so they hate marriages. They
Oh
want to
yeah.
destroy marriages. They'll tell the schizophrenic that your girlfriend is cheating on you, or your boyfriend is cheating on you, or your husband's cheating on you, your wife is cheating on you. They will do everything they can to break up marriages. They hate children.
Oh
They
yeah.
absolutely hate children. So look what the government's complicit of right now. It's the biggest child trafficking organization on the face of the planet right now. How many 85,000 children they've lost track of? Where do you think those kids are heading? There was no vetting for where they were going. All they had to do was have an address and they'd send them there. You
Yep.
know, it's the biggest child trafficking operation on the face of the planet. And our government is complicit in it.
Oh yeah, they're the gangsters. They're the biggest gangsters, man. Like you said, the mafia. You have that
Yeah.
right.
So they demand the attention of their victims. They will not be ignored. Okay? They maneuver for increased control over their victims. So the psychotic voices are doing that. The demons up in Washington are doing that.
Oh yeah.
They want control.
Mm-hmm.
And gaslighting. They
Oh
gaslight.
yeah.
They manipulate perception. Schizophrenic may be walking down the sidewalk and some guys across the street tell a joke. The voices tell them they're laughing at you because you're silly. You look stupid. They're
Yeah.
watching you.
Yeah,
They're
that's
talking
huge.
behind your back.
Yeah,
You know,
that's a huge one too. Or just misperception of somebody's words that could be totally loving and
right, right. They're
yeah.
misinterpreted the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
They demand that the victim not tell others about their presence. They don't
Oh,
want anybody else knowing about them. So
do
the
not
schizophrenic,
disturb.
right? And like I said, there's no positive benefit to the schizophrenic talking about them. Their parents get upset. They fight with them. They think they're hallucinating, that they're crazy. They take them to a psychiatrist. He puts them on meds and drugs them silly. They feel awful. And if that doesn't kind of calm things down, they lock them up. So there's really no positive. Their friends leave them. They go, "Oh, you're possessed. You're crazy. You're stupid."
Yeah.
You know,
You're alone. Nobody
you're
likes you.
alone. Right? Now, one thing, the voices are consummate. The voices are consummate liars. They lie about everything. You can't trust anything they say.
Right.
If they make a bargain with you, for the most part, you can't trust it.
Right.
Uh,
And
there was
what's Jesus? Jesus says, Satan is the father of lies. There you
yes,
go.
and they are. You
Yep.
know, I remember one case where the voices convinced one psychiatric patient, "You gouge out your eye, and we'll go away, and we'll leave you alone. We won't come back." So he gouges out his eye. They return and they start laughing him and mocking him
Mocking him.
and saying, "Look how stupid you are. You believed us. Now you're a freak. Nobody's going to be able to stand being around you. Now you're deformed. You look like a freak." And started mocking and making fun of him. That's what they're like.
Yeah. Torment, defile,
They
harass,
right.
devastation, destruction.
They steer the victim consistently away from anything that will provide joy, or pleasure. They don't want them involved in any kind of pleasurable, positive activity. And look at what happened during COVID. Don't go out, don't go to the movie theaters, don't go dancing, don't go playing sports. Stay locked in your house and feel miserable.
Yeah,
The
there's
suicide rate soared. They
oh
loved it.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, they feed off of that
Yeah, they
energy.
feed
And
off of that.
so that I know that's what was behind like the whole COVID thing, that energy, that fear, those transmissions they
Right.
first pumped out about everybody on your TV screens saying,
Yep. Yep.
"Oh, people are dying and dropping dead like flies and blah blah blah. Stay
Yeah.
in your
They see
home and blah blah
the
blah
first
blah."
ones come out where they showed Chinese people dropping dead on the
Yes.
sidewalks. Remember
Yeah.
that?
Yep.
All a lie. Total
All a
lie.
lie. Yep.
Totally deception.
Yep.
You know, they can manipulate feeling without speaking. Like you could be sitting around there minding your own business, and all of a sudden you just feel this heaviness come over you. That's them. They
Yeah.
short circuit reason. They are not reasonable. They get the
No.
person to do stuff that's not reasonable.
Right.
You know,
And,
and
and you'll see that too if you'll have patterns like you said like that of why do I crave this all of a sudden, or why do I want to do that all of a sudden, and it's like something out of the norm that you wouldn't normally do.
yeah, and we'll look at the Ukraine war. Billions
Yeah.
of dollars sent to Ukraine, so the Ukrainians and Russians can kill each other. They've virtually wiped out the male population in Ukraine at this point. They're pulling old men and females off the street and throwing them into the army and making them fight. They're getting slaughtered. The kill rate is like 20 Ukrainians for every Russian that was killed. They're getting slaughtered. They're getting absolutely slaughtered. They completely destroyed that country. They destroyed its infrastructure. Most of those people aren't coming back there.
Mm-mm. No.
And look at all the suffering. I mean, those the ones that are died, they're dead. But look at how many people are maimed and will be miserable and can't function for the rest of their life because of having an
Yeah.
arm or a leg or both legs blown off. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, it goes back to that, those things they feed off of blood, they feed off of innocent bloodshed, they feed off of that stuff.
Yes, they
And
love war.
yes,
They
yeah. It's like their elixir to make them stronger. It's sick.
and
But
look at
yeah,
our
the
government.
joy.
Look at our government feeding it. The
Oh yeah.
the the Democrats and Biden, they're just sending billions and billions of dollars over there. A good portion of it is coming back to the Democratic Party underneath the table.
Right.
So they're getting a
They're
kickback
getting their
from
cut.
the
Yeah.
murder of hundreds of thousands of Russians and Ukrainians.
Yeah. Not
It's
to mention
insane.
the other stuff that's going on in
Oh
Israel and
yeah, the
Palestine
others.
and all
Yeah,
the other
right,
billions and billions of
right.
dollars in
And look at
innocent
all
bloodshed.
look at all the wars that we've been involved in forever.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like we've here this I found this an interesting statistic. It was like in the past 200 years, over 100 million people on Earth have lost their lives due to war. Over a time span of 3,358 years, only 234 of those years were peaceful. 100 million people. That
Yeah.
tells you who's running the government.
Yeah, exactly. Who's running the governments of the world and the.
See, the other thing, they try to pass themselves off as thoughts belonging to the victim.
Oh yeah.
You know, they want them. I don't know how many schizophrenics I talked to who at some point asked the voices, "Who are you? What are you?" And their response was, "We are you. We are you." They want them to believe that they are them. And if they
Oh
believe
yeah.
that, they become them.
Yes. Yeah,
You know, they
exactly. It
start
leads to that
obeying what they
possession.
tell them to say.
Yeah.
You know, that they think, I mean, they accept their thinking. That's why it's so
Yep.
critical to understand that, you know, your thoughts are not you. They're not coming from you. You're the one listening to them. You know, those thoughts are either coming from a good place or a bad place.
Right.
You know,
And
and
that's
you're
the
the one.
simplest way to
Yeah,
distinguish. It's either good or bad. It's either life or death. It's either
right,
positive or negative.
right.
And you decide
Yeah, you're
which
the
one you
decider.
go with.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't have to listen to that voice.
exactly. Tell it it's what
That's
it is. Call it out. Liar.
You're a liar.
I
And that
reject
will
that.
help a lot of people when you hear a thought in your voice that's telling you something bad about yourself or somebody else. You need to say that's a lie.
Amen. Yeah. Call it
You know,
out.
and call it out. That's a lie. You call it out and it's like boom, it disappears. If you start paying attention to it, you're feeding it.
Yep. Yeah.
You
If you
know?
give it any kind of entertainment in your own thoughts, then you're feeding it.
Right.
But what you said about the joy, that's amazing too, because the Bible tells you the joy of the Lord is your strength. Why
Yeah.
would
They
that?
don't
And it
want you to
seems
have
like
that.
they want to go right after the first thing, like I've noticed that they go after is someone's joy.
Right.
It's joy transcends. It's a state of mind and like how your spirit's energized because it goes beyond just the emotion of happiness. It's a joyful thing. It's beyond emotion is what I'm trying to
Yeah.
get at. But
Yeah.
they
They
attack that first
exactly.
because once that wall's down, it's a lot easier to do everything else and get your emotions going to anger, hate,
Right.
guilt and shame, second guessing yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, they cause selective forgetting. So I don't know how many times I handed out, and I was stopped. When I was in the prison, when I found out the voices didn't like the 23rd Psalm, I started handing it out to the prisoners, saying, "When the voices come here, repeat this like 10 times."
Here you
You
go.
know,
Here you go.
the
They didn't
voices
like
say,
that.
"Yeah."
Hey, what are you doing?
Oh, the administration hated that. I was ordered to stop. They
Wow.
ordered me to stop handing out the 23rd Psalm.
Well, what happened to religious freedoms? I mean, if they want it, it doesn't matter what you're handing out to them.
Well, I
But
tell
I
you,
understand because you're in the system. You're a part of the.
well, the prison was operated by the devil.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, nothing good went unpunished in that place.
I
There were
don't
a
doubt it.
handful of us that were trying to change things and make things better, and we just came to the conclusion that nothing good goes unpunished in that place.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
so again, these are all patterns of these demonic entities,
Yeah.
and these are the patterns that schizophrenics hear those voices. You know, these are what these are is like the operational definition of what these things are. So since they're energetic, you can only see their effect on the physical world through the behavior of the patient.
Right.
Okay. So
Manifesting through them either.
manifesting through the patient. That's the only way you
Yeah.
can see them because they're energetic. You know, they're
Yeah.
kind of like evil ghosts. So what psychiatry is doing, it's like taking a magnetic field on a strong magnet. Now you can't see that magnetic field, you can't feel it, you can't taste it, you can't touch it. You know, for all practical purposes, as far as you're concerned, it doesn't exist.
Right.
You know, but you get a bottle of iron filings, you put it over that magnetic field, and you'll see it appear. That's what these patterns are.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
You know, this is making the negative entities, the psychotic voices, this is how they appear to physical reality.
Right. And it's
And in
interesting
effect,
because the Bible says faith is a substance of things hope for, the evidence of things not seen. But it is a substance. It's a literal spirit. Faith, those things are substances. They're real, just like you
so that,
described with the magnetic pieces and the metal
yeah,
shavings.
and that's what these are. These are like the iron filings of the psychotic voices. This is how they operate. This is the operational definition. This is how they appear in physical reality.
Yep.
And what psychiatry is doing is like getting a a bottle of Thorazine and pouring it on top of that magnetic field and expecting it to disappear. Those voices are energetic. They're
Yeah.
not physical. They're not going to disappear with physical drugs. What
No.
they're doing is drugging the brain.
Yep.
They're not drugging the voices. They're not curing the situation. They're not getting rid of the iron filings. You know,
Well, they're not about
they're
that. They're about getting billions and billions and billions
that's
of
exactly
dollars.
what they're about, and keeping the blinders on the population of the planet so they don't understand what they're doing.
Yep.
You know?
Man. Yeah, no.
So
So throughout our interview, we had talked about it earlier and I prayed over our broadcast and everything, but your voice has been going in and out. So the only thing they can mess with, I guess, is the volume, but then you knocked your mic down a little bit. But before that, your
yeah.
voice was going up and down and you weren't moving. Yeah, I was paying attention, but yeah, they can't mess with.
Well, we have a lot of interference with the podcast that I do. The sound goes out, the picture goes out. There's interference. There's static. I mean, it's it's more common than not common. You know, it
Right.
happens
Yeah.
more times than not.
Yeah, I understand that. So that's why I prayed for us before we started. And
Yeah, that's a good
we're
thing.
having a lot less. That's the only thing they've been able to do is go up and down, but you can still clearly hear you the whole time. So that's a good thing. But yeah, so can you tell us I can't wait to get you, hopefully have you back on some more because we're just learning so much. I know other people are connecting a lot of dots right now with, either loved ones or people they've known throughout their life that have been schizophrenics and, really being able to see clearly what is really going on, that it's a spiritual reality and seeing it inside of yourself, right? And understanding that you're not alone. These thoughts are not your own and you need to reject them, call them out for who they are, liars, and keep affirming the positive and good things in your life. Go out, get some sunshine,
Yeah.
hug your loved ones. If you love somebody, hug them, tell them. We need to hear these things from each other and we're better together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had one fellow write me back. He said, "Thank you for letting me know they're not me, and I can handle it from here."
That's
And I went,
awesome. That's all he needed to
good
hear.
job. That's all he needed to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you're not alone, man. And this is the truth. It's like it's the exact opposite. What I found is like it's the exact opposite. So I tell people, if you got a spirit of rage coming, reject it, rebuke it, and accept the exact opposite of whatever that is. And that's normally the weapon that combats that. So I have the perfect peace of Christ that passes all understanding, gets rid of that. Or, fear, bring up your faith. Perfect
Yeah.
love, cast out all fear, speak love, fill yourself with love.
And you
It's
have
like the exact
you
opposite.
always have a guardian angel with you all the time.
Amen. Yeah.
And sometimes many, a lot of them, they come and go depending on what what you're experiencing in life, but you have one that's always with you. They will help you if you ask.
Yes. And so
They're
that's
not, you
that's
have
cool
to
to that
ask them.
point.
You have
Yeah,
to
you
ask.
have to ask. And
You have
what
to
did he
ask.
say? You have not because you ask not. And
Right.
it's like I think he entrusts more to people who actually use them to help out others. you know if you use them and you have that faith and you're asking, he'll entrust you with more to do more good things and spread the kingdom of light in the earth and other children of God that are struggling. I truly believe that. Yeah, it's so amazing, man, what you're doing. I just so appreciate you. And we still have a little bit more time. What about spiritual experiences that you've encountered in those crazy places, dealing with these patients that are looking for help and getting the exact opposite and just being pacified? I mean, have you had any
Oh,
kind of?
I tell you, oh yeah, big time. Big
I
time.
bet.
So as I was, you know, I was able, what I had around me when I was in the prison working. So when I went to the prison, if a psychotic patient went up to one of the wardens or any of the doctors or anybody and said, "Oh, this guy's asking me questions about the voices and I don't like it," you know, the warden would go, "Get out of my face! What? I got what? Yeah, I got more important things to do about your whining about the psychologist
Oh,
asking you
deal with that.
questions.
Yeah.
Get away from me, go play in the traffic or something,
So you got to experiment more
I
there and
got
find out more
yes,
there.
I had
Wow.
free I had total freedom to experiment with what these things were and how they operated until the schizophrenic started fully recovering. And once I found out enough to, and they started
They
fully
didn't like that,
recovering,
huh?
they didn't like that. They didn't
Whoa.
like that. I was put under
Whoa.
investigation. You
What?
know, the chief psychologist put me under investigation, and he sent some of his psychological stooges down to talk to some of my patients that had recovered. And there was one who'd
Wow.
fully recovered, and he had a MMPI, which is the psychology's gold standard test
Right.
for and that test showed he was psychotic when he came into the prison, and it was a valid profile. So this guy had recovered after a while. We worked together. The voices were gone. He goes off his meds. That wasn't supposed to happen. They're not supposed to not need the meds.
Yeah.
They're supposed to always need the meds.
There's
But
something
this guy
wrong
went
here.
off,
We're not getting our
he
billion.
right, and he wasn't causing any problems. You know, so
Wow.
this stooge psychologist went up and cornered him and said, "I want to talk to you." They went in an office together, and the psychologist started asking him, what's he doing in there in those sessions with you? And the guy knew what he's up to,
Oh yeah.
so he said, he's helping us, not like you, asshole. So that
Tell it like it
infuriated me.
is.
That really, oh boy, he could have gone all day without saying that. So the psychologist says, well, are you willing to take another MMPI? He already had a valid profile from when he entered the prison showing that he was crazy.
Right.
So he took that second MMPI, and it came out non-psychotic. He wasn't
Whoa.
crazy anymore, according to their own profile. I
Whoa.
thought they'd be happy about that because they're not
No,
having to
they
spend any medication on drugs for this guy. No, they
they
paced around like a couple of demons. The chief psychologist and this guy, they were like, what's he doing? He's doing something he shouldn't be doing. These guys are
wow.
recovering. They shouldn't be doing that. What's he doing in there?
He's
You know,
shattering the darkness and shining the light. What is Jerry
no,
doing?
they went after me like a
Wow.
duck after a June bug.
Wow.
I had that going on. But while I was finding these patterns, okay, um, what I do is I had around me a group of schizophrenics who would tell me in real time what their voices were telling them when we were in session. So we'd be talking, and they tell me, well, the voices are telling me this. Usually they're telling me you're a scumbag and don't come here, and you don't know what you're doing, and this guy's crazy, and
He doesn't know what
get
he's
out of the
talking about.
office, and yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about, all that kind of stuff. But these guys stayed there. I had to deal with them. I'll help you out as much as I can. Um, as long as you're honest with me, you tell me in real time what these voices are telling me. So
Wow.
that got a little touchy at sometimes because there's one time where a guy came in and said the guard disrespected me in front of all these other inmates. I'm going to get him. You know, so it's like oh. So if they found out that I knew about that and
Oh
this guy
no.
actually did do something, I'd
Yeah.
be fired.
You'd be. Yeah.
I'd be fired. You
Yep.
know, so I just increased the number of sessions that guy had, and he came through it okay. So we probably prevented more violent episodes than
Wow.
they ever realized, by
Yeah.
stuff like that. But what started happening as we started interfering with these patterns, and taking action against it was like throwing a monkey wrench into these patterns. The voices would come in, and these people would start telling me the voices are getting angry with you. They're really getting pissed with you. And it wasn't just one; it was several, one after another, after another, after another, over months. They're telling me the voices don't like you. They don't want me coming here. They didn't want me getting out of bed. They think you're crazy and stupid. They don't want me showing up for appointments. You know,
They say you're not helping, and
you're
every
not
negative
helping.
thing. Yep.
Right, right. Why are you putting up with this nonsense? Kind of stuff.
Wow.
And then it went from there to, these guys kept coming. It was, that they could feel they were being helped at some level, or at least I was interested in helping them, not like some of the others.
Right.
Uh, So the second thing that happened was one of the guys I was working with, um, comes to my office one day, got into the medical unit without a pass somehow. I don't know how he managed that. Comes and knocking on my door in psychology, and open it, and he goes, the voices want to talk to you. That never happened before. So I said, they want to talk to me personally? He goes, yeah, they want to talk to you personally.
Oh wow.
And I went, okay, come on in. And usually it was always through the patient. It was
Right.
like,
Right. Like, what are they saying?
yeah, what are they saying? And then I'll tell them to stick their heads in the toilet or something. It'd be that kind of thing. And so, well, before that, one guy came and he turned around in the door, uh, and he just looked at me. He said, "You realize what you're doing is dangerous, don't you?" And I was just, what? I'd never thought about it before. It was like, and he just looked at me and he turned around and left. And I went, well, okay. I didn't know quite what to do with that, but I kind of stuck it in the back of my mind. I didn't forget about it either.
So that happened on a separate occasion when that guy wanted to come in
That
without a
happened
pass?
before this. That happened before this other guy came in
Didn't have a
and
pass and one the
didn't have a
voices wanted to
pass.
talk to
Yeah,
you.
right. So he came in. He said, and he just turned around and walked away. And I'm like, well, okay, that's interesting. And filed it away. Next thing happens, this guy comes in without a pass, knocks on my door saying the voices want to talk to me. So I pull him in, close the door, sit down. I look at him and said, well, what do they got to say? These words came out of his mouth. You have no right to interfere with our way of life.
Mm.
And my head just went boom. It
Boom.
was like boom. Because before that my denial system was already a shambles. It was a mess.
Yeah. You
it was
couldn't
patched together.
reconcile the programming and the
All
indoctrination of the
no, all that other
brainwashing and
stuff I couldn't. It was like anybody who saw this would have come to the conclusion that these things were demons well
yeah.
before I did, because I didn't want to see it. I
Yeah,
didn't want to.
yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
I didn't want to. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to see it. So I just kept denying it and denying it, and like, oh, it's some part of their subconscious mind. I'll get to it sooner or later. I'll find out what it is. But no, when that happened, and right after he said that, he said, that wasn't me. I didn't say that. Those weren't my words.
whoa.
You know. And I
Yeah,
said, you're not messing with me, are you? He goes, no,
yeah.
I'm not messing with you.
100% manifestation,
Right.
not him.
And it wouldn't have been real smart for them to do that. If he was messing with me, it would
Right.
not have been a good idea.
No. Oh my
So,
goodness.
uh, I kind of, after that, my denial system just fell apart. It
Yeah.
just,
You couldn't
totally.
reconcile anything. Now
No,
it's like
no. I closed
right
my
in your
office.
face.
I stared out of the office window all the rest of that day, and I'm like, my God, what am I getting myself into? Where's this going? I have no cognitive map for this. You know, it was
Yeah.
like a shot was fired across my bow. Like, you keep going and something bad's going to happen.
Yeah. So at that point, did you have like something mechanism in yourself to say, I need some kind of spiritual protection, or I need some form of prayer or something to, help me deal with these things? You know,
Well, I know I remember I would pray before I entered that prison every day. I would pray. Every day I'd ask for to be watched over, because it's a dominion of the devil.
yeah.
You
So
know,
did you ever
the,
get attacked at all physically at all being there?
in the prison, no, but I was told. Okay, so I'll get you the last part here.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so the guy who kind of came to my door and um, said the voices were warning me, you have no right to interfere with our way of life.
Right.
I kept working with him. I didn't stop working with him. And he was getting better and better. And
Whoa.
then one day, I was reading a book by called The Voice of Knowledge by Miguel Ruiz. Um, he was a shaman, and in there he was describing entities that had the same characteristics as these patterns,
Right.
and he was also talking about them being vampires.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'd already noticed that they were, but I
Right.
was always asking the schizophrenics all kinds of questions. I would hit them with all kinds of questions all the time. I was always asking them questions.
Yeah, and,
What
when you're
happens when
not
I do
with
this?
them,
And
you're probably investigating all this stuff in your own time, right? And
right, or I'm
reading these
thinking about
books
what
and
they said, or
y-
yeah,
y-
that kind of stuff. So um, I pull him in one day, and I brought in that book, and I said, I want to read you a paragraph out of this book, and I want you to tell me what you think about it. Okay. So he was still hearing the voices. So I read it to him. And when it got to the part where it was talking about the voices being vampires, them actually draining your energy,
right.
I look at him and he looks like a freaking zombie. He
Whoa.
looks just like a zombie. He's just staring at me with these, blank stare on his face, just sitting there stark still with this weird look on his face. And I'm going, he's going to attack. So I pushed the chair against the wall in case he does, so I could kick him off instead of being knocked over in the chair.
Yeah.
All they had was female guards that they put in the medical unit at the time. They wouldn't have been much use.
No.
It would have been all over by the time they got there, one way or the other. And uh, right after I finished reading that, I look at him. He's got this weird look on his face, and I hear this electrical crackling right behind my back. It sounded just like an arc welder. It was like crack, 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 crack. Just like an arc welder. You hear an arc welder welding sound just like that. So
Whoa.
it starts crackling up the right hand office of my office. Crack, crack all the way up the right hand, all the way up to the ceiling on the far end of the office. And I didn't want to take my eyes off of him, but
Right,
here I
because
am
he's just still
trying.
sitting there in that
He's
blank
still
stare, like,
sitting there in that. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know what he's going to do. And I'm trying to figure out what this is. If I can see anything, is there any sparks? Is there any smoke? Is there anything? There was nothing. All it was the crackling. I couldn't see anything else. I couldn't smell anything. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't feel anything. It was just this crackling going up. And then it starts cutting across the top and the far end of the office across by the ceiling. So I could see him and look for it at the same time. I didn't see anything. And this went on for a long time. It was like, 25, 30 seconds it was going on.
whoa.
And then it comes down the left-hand wall, crackling, and it jumps into this Rubbermaid trash can near my left leg. And I turn around, I look in there, there's nothing in there. But this crackling's coming from there. And then boom, just like that, it stops. And I'm blown away. I'm like, what just happened? What happened? What's going on? What am I losing my mind? Am I getting crazy now too? It's like, you
Yeah.
know,
Is that guy
so,
still
and
stoic the whole time?
yep,
Just
the whole time. And then he slowly gets up and he goes, I gotta leave. And I'm like, get out of here. Go, get out of here. Go, you know, don't come back, you know. And I was just, I was
Whoa.
stunned. And there was nobody I could talk to.
Yeah.
Nobody, I couldn't tell anybody this.
They'd be
I
like,
couldn't
here's
go
some
to my,
pills, Jerry.
yeah, right. That's exactly what would have happened. You're a nutcase,
Here's some
So I,
pills.
I just had to swallow it myself and sit with it, because
Wow.
there wasn't anybody I could talk to, not even my wife. She go, well, what are you digging through the head of these criminally insane people? What the
You're
matters
getting
the matter
insane.
with you?
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
They're gonna make
yeah,
you insane.
yeah, yeah. So there was no, I had to just keep it to myself. So the first time I could talk to a sane person about it was the co-author of my book.
Wow.
She heard voices when she was a young woman, and I had known her for 10 years before
Wow.
she told me.
Whoa.
Now I could talk to some sane person about it who
Isn't
knew
that
what I was
amazing
talking
how
about.
God will do that?
Oh
He'll
yeah.
bring people alongside of you that you didn't know who they were, and then something happens like that, and they're like,
Yeah, so
I
we
can
were
talk to
working with
you.
prison reform. So I couldn't
Wow.
attack my own system, so I helped her attack the Alabama system, which was a Neanderthal system, It was an awful system. The Alabama, the correctional prison system, it's archaic. I mean, it's barbaric. So, you know, I would help her because she had a relative in there, and I'd say, well, okay, this is what you can do to shake them up. This is the terminology you can use. This is what you have to watch out for. So I'd help her from a staff point of view to attack the Alabama system.
That's awesome.
And her relative actually ended up dying in there actually. So
man.
afterward, you know, when she first told me that, I didn't believe it. So I started hammering her with questions, and questions only that somebody who heard voices could answer.
Right.
And she was like, bam, 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 you know, the whole time. And I was just stunned. I was absolutely stunned because she's one of the most spiritual people that I know.
Wow.
And she just came through it like, you know, one after another, after another, after another. And I'm like, whoa. And then finally we decided, hey, we need to let the world know about this.
Yeah.
You know? And I said, we need to write a book about this.
Wow.
So we did. And that's the one you saw.
Yeah.
This one
Hold
right
that
here.
book up again.
This is how it came about. You can see Sherry Sweeney.
Wow.
You know, this wouldn't have come out in this form without her help. I mean, it might have come out in a different form, but it wouldn't have come out as well as this one did.
Yeah,
so you want to learn about the psychotic voices and what psychiatry is really all about. Take a look at this. You can find it on Amazon. You can get it at lulu.com.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry, and thank you, Sherry. You guys grab that book if you want some truth about the whole thing. Get that book.
so after this guy warped my head and left the office, I didn't call him back for probably 3 or 4 months. I didn't. It took me that long for my curiosity. For my curiosity to overcome my fear.
Yeah,
because I had no idea what I was getting into.
Yeah,
you know, there was
the fear was real at that point. If you, you said, you didn't, it broke every preconceived notion, every other thing that they could possibly be, and you were hit with that reality smack dab in the face.
It just shattered. It just shattered my psyche. I mean, it was like where am I going? Where's this going? Well, I don't have no cognitive map how to proceed in this. There was no map. There was
nobody about it.
You can't tell nobody. I couldn't ask anybody anything.
Yeah.
You know, nobody saw it. The only people I could talk to who understood were the schizophrenics themselves. I could talk to them about it. They understood.
Yeah.
But I couldn't talk to any normal person about it. And we had long conversations about this kind of stuff.
Wow.
You know, and if anybody overheard them, they'd go, "Oh yeah, they're both crazy."
Yeah, you know? I think they both need some more meds.
Right. So it's like I had a foot in both worlds.
Wow.
You know, it was like, and that was my introduction. So finally, you know, 3-4 weeks later, I finally got the courage to call that guy back in to try to question him about what happened that day.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So he comes in and he's looking good. He had a lot of energy. I thought he'd be a wreck. I thought he'd be an absolute wreck.
Right, because he hadn't seen you for.
If they could do that, I couldn't imagine what they could do to him.
Right.
You know, if they could do it, and it also shook me up because I didn't think they could affect physical reality.
Right.
You know, I thought I was safe. I thought, they're like ghosts. I mean, or something like ghosts. They can't touch you. I mean, I was feeling all cocky and sure. That happened. That was a wake up call.
Yeah.
That was physical noise that they created for a long time.
Oh yeah.
You know, it blew my safety blanket, thinking that I was safe because they couldn't do anything physical.
Right.
That was physical. You know.
Yeah.
So
blew that right out of the water.
Blew that out of the water because I was stunned. I was absolutely stunned. I mean, I was shocked. I didn't know where this was going.
I can only imagine first hearing or experiencing something like that the first time.
Yeah, had I not been an adrenaline junkie, I think I probably would have quit right then. I think it's that adrenaline junkie. It's like, okay, all right, you calm down. Go in for another dose.
Yeah, man. He fashioned you for this stuff to break open and break it wide open and tell the truth.
It was like I was designed for this. And so I called him in. I called him in 3-4 weeks later, and he comes in. He's looking good. I'm surprised. I said, "Come on in, sit down." We did some small talk, and I said, I asked him, did you hear that crackling in my office the last time you were here?
Right.
And he goes, yeah, I heard it, but I was surprised you did,
Ooh.
meaning me,
Yeah.
you know. And I said, when the hell was that? He says, that was them. I said,
That
them, the
was them.
voices? Yeah. And I said, them, the voices? And he said, yeah, that was the voices. I said,
Whoa.
well, what in the blazes were they trying to do? He said, they were trying to scare you off. And I said, well, they did a damn good job of it.
Oh.
So then I asked him, I said, you really looked strange when you were leaving my office. You looked like a zombie. I said, what were they telling you when you left my office? He said, they were telling me to go to get a shank and stick it in your gut. Shank is a homemade prison
Right.
knife. And I'm thinking, well, I've worked 6 months with this guy. He wouldn't do something like that. So I asked him, I said, well, why didn't you do it? He said, I couldn't find one and nobody would give me one.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's what I said. Woo, what am I getting into?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll manifest that physical
So,
reality real quick.
yeah, so I think after that, um, I think the Lord gave me a sixth sense. So I could feel when they were around. I could feel how angry or disturbed they were, and there was no other feeling like it that I've ever experienced. It's like this icky electrical feeling.
Mm.
It's only associated with them,
Yep.
with the voices.
Yeah. Well, there's certain
Nothing
places you
else.
can walk into and you can feel like
Well, the
there's,
prison was one of them. You
yes.
walk
Yeah.
into
You
that
were already
prison and you're just
walking
like,
into a huge, yeah. Yeah. So your spirit of discernment levels are probably a lot higher because God's taken you through that training in your profession and now being able to tell all of this stuff and
oh
tell
yeah.
people the
I
truth.
tell
Yeah.
you that the one of the worst head warpers I've ever had was, I flew with this Arizona Civil Air Patrol for 23 years.
Wow.
We'd go up in the light plane and we'd do search and rescue stuff and fly all over Arizona and
Wow.
free as a bird. So the airport was near the prison. So there's one day I took the morning off because we were flying a mission, and we're flying all over the place, just enjoying just the freedom of flight and looking down and da, 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 you know, and you flew up there for 2-3 hours and then landed, and then 20 minutes later I was walking into the prison. From being free as a bird to walking, and my head just went. I'll never forget that. I went, oh.
Like, why am I doing this again?
Yeah,
Wow.
I'll never. It was just two diametrically opposite conditions of being. It just warped
Wow.
me. It was like it twisted my head.
Well, man, we thank God that you did what you did and you are who you are. So you guys like you and Sherry can blow the whistle on this stuff. We'll just shine light on it, tell the truth about it, because so many people are lied to and they're so indoctrinated and ingrained to do whatever the priest in the white lab coat tells them to do.
Yeah, yep. Take whatever pills they're told to take.
Yeah. Yeah, and I notice it's getting sicker and sicker. They're going after the innocent. Those things that the
Oh
entities
yeah,
hate, children, the
yeah.
innocence, they're
Well,
going
they got
after them at a younger and younger age now.
they got 1 million kids on psychiatric drugs now. These are the drugs that destroy your brain. They rot out your brain.
And they're not even done developing.
They're not even done developing. They've got thousands and tens of thousands of kids on these drugs now. Ritalin and all this other stuff. I mean, they don't care. They don't care. There's
Yeah,
nobody
see,
stopping them. They they
it's like
they bought off the Congress.
it's the
You know,
psychotic evil mafia complex of the spirit world, man, because it's the lower levels that are working on the people who are easier to manipulate or easier to inhabit. And then you've got the huger ones working through the people who are trying to control the chaos and sucking out as much money and much manipulation, more control they can at the higher levels. And it's the same entities.
The
It's just
same
on
entities.
bigger
Right.
levels, stronger,
Right.
reinforced
Yep.
levels
Yep.
of a
That's exactly
bigger
what's going
mafia
on.
group that's
Right.
unified, right?
Yep. Yep.
For their
With
goal.
greed, power, and money.
Yeah, it's
You
sick,
know,
man.
screw the little guy. It is sick. It's very sick.
It's straight
People
from
need to
hell.
wake up to what these toxic psychiatry. You want to know about how bad they actually are. Get that book by Brigham. Read about how bad these he was one of them.
Name the title so people can search
It's
it.
it's called Toxic Psychiatry by a psychiatrist named Brigham. Yeah, he'll tell you all about it, all the lies and the deceptions and the the conning and the evilness of it all.
Yeah, sick, man. But thank God there's light.
Yeah,
There's a lot of darkness,
yeah.
and as the world gets darker, the light shines lighter. So yeah,
Well, they say the Lord turns all bad into good. I mean, there's a good outcome eventually.
yeah. And we're the self deciders. We're the ones. He gives us that free will, and I like to describe it to people about the war on the inside of you. It's the arena where you get to demonstrate your will to agree with love and light and God's way, the kingdom of heaven, or your will for yourself, which ultimately is the devil's way, because the
Yeah,
devil decided to break off from God, and I shall be like the most high God, and I shall ascend to the highest heights of heaven. And
well, you look at the world we're born into. I mean, you're born into a physical world which is separated. I mean, God runs all through it, but you separate. It's an illusion. I mean, it's a one big illusion. You look in 300 years, everything around you is going to be dust. And you buy into this illusion, and you forget that you're a spiritual being, and that it's spirit that drives everything. I mean, it's in everything. It drives everything. It's life.
mm-hmm.
And start looking at money and power and greed and self-centeredness and it this whole setup. I mean, God banished the devil to the earth,
Yep,
not to
exactly.
space, not to Mars, to
Nope,
the earth
not to some fancy mystical place.
here.
Yep,
And he's still here. And
yep,
and the biggest trick that he's ever pulled on the human race is that he doesn't exist.
yep.
And he's
Biggest
out
lie
there,
ever.
and
Yeah,
he's busier than ever.
yeah. And then so if he exists, hello, God must as well.
Yeah, yeah,
you know and
yep,
it's a trip, man, because he's the prince, and he's a prince of the air, or the one of the other references, principalities of the air. What's the air? The air is spirit. What's going in and out of your lungs? The breath of life that God gave you. It's your spirit. What do you do when your ghost leaves? That's
yeah,
your last time.
yep,
you
yeah.
know
It's like we're driving around these bodies. I mean, we're spiritual beings, and
yep.
that's completely lost on psychology and psychiatry.
Yeah.
That
Oh, and so many
we
other areas of life we get caught up and indoctrinated with and lied to ever since we're born.
right. Yeah, that's right. We've been lied to ever since we opened our eyes.
Yep. Yeah. And they get people to reinforce it. So I have a 23-year-old and I have a 7-year-old, and I made it a point to for both of them. I'm not telling them Santa Claus is real. I'm not telling them tooth fairies will. I'm not telling them, all of these seem like innocent lies, right? That were reinforced through traditions of man and reinforced. And then they get older to the age where they start thinking for themselves, and then they find out that that's a lie. That's a lie. Well, what the hell else is a lie? So it
Right.
can work kind of in their favor. But if you're the person not telling them lies that is supposed to love them, support them, and protect them, that reinforces a good thing versus they lied to me. I wonder what else they lied to me about,
Right.
kind of idea.
And
And
that's kind of what I ran into in undergraduate school. There was this, I'll make this my last one. is
Yeah.
we had to read a paper written by clinical psychologists who said that if two crazy people met up with each other, so if both of them felt they were Biden, one of them would have to change into somebody else, Macron or something. And even as an undergraduate, I'm going, why would they have to do that? You know, if if you met another guy named Isaac, he
Right.
wouldn't have to change his name because you were called Isaac,
No.
or even if it was, Isaac Barreno,
Yeah.
you wouldn't change your name because of that,
No.
you know? So
No.
why would a psychotic guy have to change his name? It made no sense to me,
Yeah.
you
It
know?
doesn't.
So I just threw it in the back of my mind. I was already distrusting psychology because there was no way to verify for myself virtually anything they were saying.
Anything they
It was
taught
like
you or
you,
said, yeah.
right. It's just you take all this stuff and you memorize it and you spit it back to us and you'll get a grade for 4 years of that. You know, that's what, and there's no way to verify any of it except experimental psychology. I mean, you could go into the rat lab and you could see this stuff happening. I mean, you could actually see it happening,
Wow.
but not the rest of it was, like the DSM, totally made up. How do you know this is the truth? Well, because we said so. That's why we're the
This is the Bible
we're
of
the elite.
psychology.
Yeah, right. You listen to us. We know what's going on. But um, I remembered that. And then there was one day when I was doing rounds on the second floor of the psychiatric unit at the state hospital I was working. Here's this guy carrying on a conversation with the voices. And all the psychology book said is that they were hallucinations. So I was thinking, well, they're like word salad. They won't
Yeah.
make any sense.
Right.
No, he was
Right.
carrying on a coherent
Full blown
conversation with them,
conversation.
full blown coherent conversation, and so were the others after that. So it's like,
Wow.
well, they're not. The voices aren't what I thought they were because they never mentioned them other than they were hallucinations. So I thought hallucinations were crazy. So the voices must be crazy too. No, full blown coherent conversations, arguing with them, fighting with them,
Articulate,
well,
strategic in their attack.
articulate,
Yeah.
you know, all that. So I go up to this guy because I didn't recognize him, and we're supposed to keep an eye on everybody on that unit. And I asked him, I snuck up behind him, and I was trying to hear what the conversation was, and he caught me. So he turns around, and I said, "Well, I'm Jerry. I'm the psych for this unit." I said, "I haven't seen you here before. What's your name?" And he looks at me and he goes, "I'm Jesus Christ." And I thought for a second, and I go, "No, no, you can't be Jesus Christ because I am." You're right in the middle of the hallway, and I'm standing there looking. Okay, what's he gonna do?
Yeah.
What's he gonna do? You know, and he looks around. He's thinking about it for a minute, and then he goes, "Okay, we can both be Jesus Christ." And he strolled off. And then I went, like you said, what else did they lie to me about?
Exactly.
What else are they lying to me about?
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that kind of triggered it.
Yep.
I was from then on. I was already weary because I didn't trust authority to start with.
Right. Right.
And
I
here's
didn't either when I was young. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing, man. Yeah, if I could, thank you so much for your time, Jerry. I appreciate it, and I hope to get you back on to get closer, and we can learn more from you for sure, a lot more. I know I can, and it's going to help me so big time in helping people and getting deliverance, and then learning more, coming back, talking about the May system and how you operate and everything. And I'm going to include all the links in the
oh
description, guys.
well, let me give you the address for them if you want to. This is the address to the Causism Institute. So if you want to find a therapist, I mean, this stuff works. It works better than anything I've ever seen. I mean, it'll get rid of a major trauma in an hour, and you won't be feeling it anymore. It'll be gone. You'll remember it, but the emotional upheaval for it is gone, gone.
Yeah.
Mace was on to something. This is the only thing I've ever seen work. The address is causisminstitute.com. That's spelled CAUSISM Institute, INSTITUTE.com. That'll take you to the webpage for uh, there's information on it there. There's therapists who are available there.
Cool. Yeah, because that's
You know,
what I
and there,
do basically, but if there's there's other things out there that can help people, we're all about that. However you can get freedom and get some help, go for it, man, because there's much more than what we've been lied to about in this whole world. And it's
yeah,
spirit.
yeah.
And what does the Bible say? God is spirit. So those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Yeah. Wow. Oh, can I ask you a couple questions that I forgot to ask for a friend, a young man who's going up through schooling right now, and he's got a good head and good heart on his head and shoulders. He says, "What would you say to a young man or a woman looking to get licensed by the state? Is there another route to go, or advise those in that field to go instead of
Well,
being licensed by the
yes,
state?"
yes, yeah, there is. It's causes you don't have to have a college education to become a causism therapist. You don't have to have a college education. You just have to really want to help people. You don't
Mhm.
have to have a degree in psychology. You know, if matter of fact, if I could trade in both my undergraduate degree and my master's degree, this causism training that I received is much more useful than anything I learned in those 6 years or anything I learned in the PhD program. What I
Wow.
learned in the PhD program was more worthless than anything else.
Wow.
You know, so yeah, you can go to become a causism trainer or a therapist. Undergo. I think it costs about $5,000. And you will receive. They have a causism university.
Yeah, so you'll get all the
That
curriculum and
you'll get
everything
all
and
the
be
curriculum.
trained
You'll
and
all the training. You'll have to send in videotapes of working with people, and they will eventually certify you, and then they'll add you to their list of certified counselors. But
great.
this works better than anything I've ever seen. I mean, and it works quick, very quick.
Nice.
And these psychological disturbances are gone. They're gone just because like I said, psychological problems are energy. Their memories energy.
Yeah.
Thoughts are energy. You know, they're not physical problems, and this is
Yeah.
an energetic therapy. And Mace found that the mind doesn't work how psychology think it does. He said all mind does is take pictures of where you put your attention. He said that spirit does everything else. It does the seeing, it does the hearing, it does the feeling, it does the thinking. All that is done by the spirit,
Yep. Yeah.
not you know
Yeah, I'm looking forward to have
not
you
the
back
mind.
on to have more talks about that, about Mason stuff, because I know in my experience the only thing that seems to get people freedom and to literally cast them out and off of that person, and once again it has to do with free will too, right?
Yeah,
But
if they
to
want to
cast
keep them, there's no getting rid of them. That's for sure.
yeah, and even if and if you do, like Jesus said, it's not a good thing, because that thing goes out and it runs to and fro throughout the dry places of the earth, thinking, I don't find nothing else. I'm going back to the house that I had, and I'm going to bring seven more stronger with me and
And that's
set
what
up
happens
shop. And the
too.
state of the
It
person is worse than it was before.
Right. If they don't get on a positive spiritual path and stay there, that's
Yes.
exactly what has happened. And I've seen that happen a number of times where the person thinks that because the voices are gone, that this is like an antibiotic where the
Yeah.
infection is gone.
Yeah.
It's
Like
not
it's a
like
one
that.
and done deal. No, it's
No,
like
it's not a one.
it's a
And that's
walk
what
of
they were
life.
thinking. They were going, okay, the voices are gone. I'm good. Uh-uh.
Yeah, that's what I tell people
No,
all the time. It's not just a one and done deal.
no,
It's a
no.
process, and it's
It's a
very much
process.
a walk of life
Right.
of rebuilding yourself up in your mind and renewing your mind and your thought process and your spirit. It's a process. You don't just jump to it.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, the only thing I've seen them react to is Jesus and having that authority in the name of Jesus, but it goes beyond that because it has to do with the reality inside oneself. Like
Well,
that place
you
in
know, it works for the Muslims too.
yeah.
They don't like the Muslims either.
Isn't that something? Yeah.
They don't like
Yeah.
the, and the Muslims are much more aware of them than Christians. They have specific prayers against them and everything.
Yeah.
They're much more aware of these things than Christians are.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it
Then
was it was funny talking to that group of Muslim fellas. You know, it was like
yeah, that's so
I'd
cool.
never talked to a bunch of Muslims before, but they were pretty level headed. They were young guys. You know, they were
That's
like
so cool.
yeah, it was cool, and their response was cool. I mean, they were really interested in this stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah, because what I was getting to is the spiritual reality of the entities will know if you're operating as a child of God or not. They recognize the spiritual authority that one takes when they're taking up their dominion. They know. They recognize the real. So if you're just somebody that comes up and starts using the name of Jesus or something in a perfect picture in Acts 19, the guy saw Paul casting out demons in Jesus' name, and they come up to him, well, I command you to come out of this guy by the name of Jesus and the name of Paul. And the demon manifests through the guy, says, I know Jesus, I know Paul. Who the hell are you? Rips the guys apart, and they run away from there. 7 guys run away from there naked because they were getting ripped apart by these demons.
Well, yeah, yeah. The prisoners with voices would get supernaturally strong.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
they supernaturally strong. And I was watching a fight the other day with Mike Tyson against this psychotic guy, Ike somebody. I mean, he was hearing voices. You know, Tyson only lost a few fights. One of the fights he lost was to this psychotic guy. And
Whoa.
what I remembered was there was a prisoner who didn't want to get rid of the voices because he said when he got angry and he got into a fight, it was the voices who were fighting through him.
Whoa.
They took over and they were doing the fighting for him.
Yeah, well, I've seen it so many times when there's a demon possessed person, and it could be I've seen children that are throwing grown men off of them, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
superhuman strength, them trying to hold
Uh,
them down and them throwing them off of
I
them.
know. I've got
Yeah,
stories about that, but I'm getting hoarse, so
yeah, yeah, brother.
I'm
Yeah. So the only follow up question was, will they be able to? So they're asking if the clients can they do what they feel is beneficial for the client, where they have to follow state protocols. They would have to follow state protocols if they were state
yeah.
licensed, right?
The state isn't going to like any of this.
Yeah,
You know, they're going to be traditional counseling, which doesn't work, and pills
and pharmakia. Yeah,
and pharmacia.
yeah,
So I would have them check into the Causism Institute if they really want to help people. That's the
right.
way to do it. You
Yeah,
know,
you
because
hear that?
you come out of 4 years of psychology, you're not prepared for anything.
No, and you're just indoctrinated with stuff
You're
that
just
doesn't work.
indoctrinated with all this worthless stuff that doesn't work on the clinical, on the front lines.
Yeah,
It
where
just
you're really
doesn't
wanting
work.
to help people.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
They got all these counseling theories and all that kind of stuff. It was all it was all garbage compared to this stuff.
jeez,
It just doesn't work. Matter of
yeah.
fact, I was talking to the head trainer the other day, who did a session on with a psychologist, and the psychologist went, "Where's this been? How come it's not out there?" She said, "How come they're not teaching this?"
Yeah,
They don't want to. They took this
no.
system to one of the universities in Australia, which is it originated in Australia,
Oh
and the
wow.
guy who originated it was not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. He was a ship captain. He drove these big
Whoa.
freighters back and forth across the ocean, but he was
Whoa.
always intensely interested in how the mind worked, and he
Wow.
spent his whole life trying to figure out how to do this and how to get a therapy that actually worked. I think
Yeah.
he eventually went back for his counseling degree, but he had a clean slate when he started. He didn't
Wow.
have to he didn't have to throw off all this garbage that like I did.
Right.
Well, this is garbage and that's garbage and this is garbage and all these 6 years, 8 years, it's all garbage. doesn't have any function on the front lines and the clinical front lines. It
Yeah,
doesn't
proving
work.
it wrong for yourself. Yeah,
Right.
the hard way. Yeah,
The hard way.
yeah.
Yeah, the hard way. It was the hard way too.
Well, yeah, I want to respect your time, Jerry. I appreciate you coming on. Hope to have you on for some more. Hope you guys learned a lot. I had a great time, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks, Jerry.
Okay. All
Appreciate you.
right. Send me a link when you have one.
Oh, you know I will, brother.
Okay. Take care.
You too.